League of Legends, The Lord of the Thousand Year War. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76. The best way to treat motion sickness is to go and come. At daybreak, the carriage slowly passed through the villages that were beginning to sprout outside the city and finally drove into the majestic immortal fortress after a bumpy ride. On this day, the gates of this ancient and solemn fortress were opened wide, and the whole country of this emerging country celebrated. Miss Ha had never seen such prosperity before. As she walked along, there were people coming and going, and she always felt that there were more people than in the Emerald Territory. Lord Lester, are we going to the fortress conference hall now, or go find Sister Rose? Lester held the two cute little girls, but his mind was thinking about another woman. Okay, do you want me to contact Ms. Rose? Let's contact her. He took out the crystal ball and closed his eyes. The light of the crystal ball began to flash regularly, and soon, Meredith opened her eyes again. Ms. Rose said she is still in the mansion. Go to Blackthorn Rose Street. The coachman said yes, waved the whip, and gently whipped the horses back. Puff the horse snorted, leisurely turned around the narrow brick road, and began to drive into a slightly narrow path. In the immortal fortress, except for the Triumphal Avenue and several other special roads involving large-scale Legion deployments, most of the roads for people to pass through were deliberately designed into narrow and steep paths. Above the eaves were battlements and arrow holes where soldiers were stationed, and there were murderous intentions everywhere. Putting aside the heavy sense of oppression, the immortal fortress can be said to have achieved the ultimate defense, otherwise it would not be named the immortal fortress. I don't know what terrible things Mordekaiser, who has already ruled the Valoran continent, built the immortal fortress like this to prevent. It can't be those underground rats, right? When it was about to enter the core inner city, the carriage was stopped by narcs and soldiers. It was not until Lester came forward that the soldiers let it go with a respectful look. The carriage drove into the inner city smoothly and soon passed the layers of guards and stopped at the intersection of Blackthorn Rose Street. The four people got off the carriage. Lord Lester, I need to leave for a while. Meredith seemed to have something important to do, so she just said a few words and left in a hurry. Let's go. Remember to say hello to Sister Rose later. Okay, Hina nodded obediently, while Miss Ha silently observed the surrounding environment, obviously confused by the magnificent mansion. Holding the hands of the two little girls, Lester smiled and greeted the patrolling Black Rose Mage, and came to Rose's mansion. As usual, Rose's house was still unlocked. Lester turned the delicate brass door knob and pushed open the heavy mahogany door. Unlike before, this time, as soon as Lester walked into the room, his body suddenly became cold, and in an instant he felt like he was being watched. The next moment, his body relaxed, the magic fluctuations dissipated, and the feeling of being watched disappeared. No wonder Rose never locks the door. Who dares to barge in with such a fierce momentum? As soon as the door was closed, rhythmic footsteps came from upstairs. With a charming smile, Rose came down from upstairs in a transparent purple gauze. Shaking and shaking, looking at the oncoming big white, even the knowledgeable Lester felt a little dizzy. Don't think too much, he just got carriage sick because of the bumpy ride. Facing the beautiful woman, Miss Ha and Hina stared with their eyes wide open, their mouths wide open into an O shape, staring blankly at Rose, who opened the big move without saying a word, and she was dumbfounded in the spot. The next second, Lester quickly covered her cute big eyes with his two arms. Although they lost their vision, the two little girls' funny O-shaped mouths still refused to close, which shows how powerful the big move is. They even forgot to say hello. Miss Ha and Hina are still young. What are you doing? Knowing that Rose meant to declare her sovereignty, Lester couldn't help but be a little speechless. How old is he? Why bother with 2-3-year-old girls? I miss you. Rose came forward and hugged Lester's arm, glancing at the two little guys, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, leaning softly on the man's shoulder. Her bones melted instantly. Let the little sister wait first. Come on, come into the house with me. You are so old, but you still like to act like a child. Miss Hina, wait for your brother here. Sister Rose is a little uncomfortable. She has a fever, so she is wearing a little cooler. Don't learn from your sister. Brother, I will be back soon. Half pulled and half pulled, Rose was controlled and taken away, leaving only the two stupid little girls staring at Dabe and Xylophon under the purple veil, unable to come back to their senses for a long time. Although it is not that I have never seen Rose in the Emerald Territory, I have never seen such a big scene. The overly direct expression brought unfathomable influence to the two little girls. I don't know how long it took. The so-called coming and going became going and never coming back, and the two little girls finally started talking. Sister, why doesn't Sister Rose wear clothes? Hearing her sister's somewhat hoarse voice, Miss Ha's eyes were straight, and she swallowed dryly, with the lingering Dabe in her mind. Where, right? Why did Sister Rose take Brother Lester away? 2. Cure, fever? Hina, Miss Ha. The atmosphere became a little weird as the two sisters looked at each other. Sister Rose said she was not feeling well. Should we go up to see her? Finally, Hina took the initiative to make a new suggestion. Miss Ha was stunned, and then a smirk appeared on her face. Why not? Let's not do it. What if Brother Lester and Rose are doing something important that cannot be disturbed? We would be too rude. Hearing the familiar words, Original C-38, Hina sat down on the chair, her cheeks puffed up in anger. Humph, if you don't want to go, then don't go. You can just wait for Brother Lester to be taken away. Immortal Fortress, underground city. Completely different from the buildings on the upper floors, the crisscrossing roads lead in all directions, and the overlapping buildings grow in a strange and harmonious way everywhere, making use of the few dim spaces. Only a few places can be directly exposed to the sun, and those places are where the real underground dignitaries live. Most of them are occupied by high-level mages of the Black Rose. Now there are also leaders of the Raxi tribe living there, which can be regarded as an equal distribution of the power of the Immortal Fortress. More dark parts are waiting to be developed. In the underground city, the most central road hub is called the Mirror Corridor. It takes the center of the pentagonal diagonal as the base point and presents a perfectly harmonious symmetrical structure. The whole is made of long gray stone bricks from the Dark Ages. It can lead to the upper city and different divisions of the lower city. The further you go down, the steeper the terrain and the lower the visibility. You can only rely on roadside torches or underground mica and crystal lamps flashing with various colors for lighting. Especially in the dark of night, the dreamlike luminous crystals will light up the entire underground world, making people lost in the strange and intoxicating underground city. In the underground city, destroying mica and luminous crystals is the most unforgivable sin, especially when every luminous crystal has been marked by the magic of the Black Rose Wizard. Even the poorest and most destitute will retreat 3 feet from the luminous crystals that are within reach. Through the Mirror Corridor, Meredith came to the depths of the underground, crossed the underground streets, and walked into a mysterious academy with the style of the Dark Ages. Those of you who like the book can also vote, so that there will be more updates when it is put on the shelves next month. Chapter 77 Body and Soul. The exact time of the birth of the Black Rose Academy is unknown. Meredith only knows that hundreds or even thousands of years ago, when the Black Rose, a secret society that existed under the Immortal Fortress, was established, this Wizard Academy that contained countless black magic and lost forbidden techniques already existed. If we have to worry about the time of its establishment, it may be traced back to when the Immortal Fortress was just established. In the underground world, the one with the greatest power is always a woman who has lived for an unknown number of years, a woman who founded the secret society Black Rose, and a mysterious existence who controls the Black Rose Academy. The Pale Lady, also known as the Pale Witch. There is even a legend that the Dark Tyrant who controls the Immortal Fortress died at the hands of the Pale Lady. No one has seen the real face of the Pale Lady, no one knows the real name of the Pale Lady, and no one knows how many years the Pale Lady has lived. Some people even say that the Pale Lady is a man who likes to wear gorgeous scholared women's clothes, taste scholared wine in elegance, and expose his dark leg hair. No one knows the specific news about the Pale Lady. There are only legends circulating among the people, and there can only be legends. The Pale Lady represents the extended meaning of black magic: mysterious, powerful, noble, and taboo. The few black wizards who claim to have seen the Pale Lady also kept silent and made a mystery. In the underground world, only the messengers who serve the Pale Lady are everywhere. In today's era, Rose is the messenger favored by the Pale Lady, and the ruler who must obey and respect the Black Rose Wizard group. Not only because of her identity, but also because of her strength. Rose is also the magic mentor of many wizards in the academy. Ms. Rose. Meredith's mind emerged with a beautiful and moving woman's face. In the past, she was always full of fear and respect for the owner of the face. At this moment, she returned to the academy again, but she had some emotions in her heart that she couldn't understand. It seemed that there were some thoughts that shouldn't exist, and she didn't dare to explore deeply. Shaking her head, Meredith sighed and put the faces of men and women intertwined behind her. After passing the magic recognition, the female wizard pushed open the black iron fence magic door. When the enchanted carved fence gate is closed, it will form a black rose covered with thorns and blooming silently, which interprets the essence of the Black Rose Society, that is, pursuing the mysterious power of taboos in the beauty of silence. This is the secret of black magic. This is also something that all Black Rose wizards must remember for a lifetime when they enter school. Meredith, long time no see. Passing through the white stone path covered with dark-hued flower beds under the influence of magic, the female wizard turned her head and saw the female senior who studied fire black magic with her, a middle-aged woman named Helia. "Hello, Senior Helia." Approaching the female wizard sitting on the white long stone bench, Meredith performed a unique wizard salute of the Black Rose, looking very ladylike. Standing up and returning a wizard salute to her junior, Helia put down the magic study manual she had copied herself in her hand, and smiled at Meredith in a friendly manner. "I heard that you left the Immortal Fortress with an ancient survivor under the arrangement of Ms. Rose. You should not leave this time when you come back, right? I haven't discussed magic with you for a long time. How to do it specifically depends on Ms. Rose's arrangement." Meredith shook her head with a wry smile, hesitated for a moment, and still asked the senior in front of her who had a good relationship with her. "Senior Helia, I want to get some ways to change my appearance and enhance my attractiveness. I wonder if you have any good suggestions?" Helia was a little surprised and looked at the young female wizard in front of her carefully. Zhao Zeng's thick eyebrows were wide, her nose was quite high, and her sexy mouth was a little big. Looking at her facial features alone, she could be considered a landmark. Unfortunately, the slightly wide jaw directly destroyed the overall beauty, making the woman look a little dull and too serious. Compared with those beautiful bitches who exuded death, she was only of average appearance. Secretly guessing that the young junior might have found the object of his affection, Helia's face remained calm. If we talk about who knows how to maintain beauty and change body shape, the Pale Lady must be the best. Unfortunately, it is almost impossible for us to meet the Pale Lady, so naturally we can't ask for advice from the Pale Lady. Helia observed the junior in front of her calmly, and her expression suddenly became a little weird. But in addition to the Pale Lady, there are also outstanding people in this field in the Black Rose Magic Mentor group who serve the Pale Lady. Do you know Helena? Helena. Hearing this name, Meredith could only remember that this somewhat unfamiliar name seemed to be very famous in the Black Rose Magic Mentor group. It was known for its outstanding beauty and hot body. It had seen countless people and was popular with both men and women. This name had an unclear relationship with many handsome or even ugly male wizards, and it could be called the ultimate socialite in the dark wizard world. The nice name is Socialite, but most black wizards who are self-disciplined like to call Helena a bitch in secret. I've only heard of Mage Helena's name, but I've never met her. However, it is said that Mage Helena has outstanding charm. Meredith, this is what I want to tell you. Come here, I'll tell you a secret. Using magic to sense the surroundings, Helia did not find any traces of other people, so she motioned Meredith to come closer. After hesitating for a while, Meredith decided to accept this secret, which she didn't know whether it was true or not. Don't look at the group of men Helena seduced, but Helena is actually more than 200 years old enough to be your and my grandmother. Meredith, who listened carefully, had a little more surprise on her face, but did not say anything. Helia nodded with satisfaction, and continued to whisper in the ear of the square-faced female mage. The reason why she has the appearance of a young girl and the perfect figure of a mature woman is only because she knows the black magic of changing skin and recasting flesh and blood. Over the long river of time, Helena has long discarded her original body. By constantly transplanting organs and skin from beautiful girls, she gradually possessed her current beauty. Countless innocent and beautiful girls have died in her hands, and even their corpses can't be put together. After a pause, Helia's voice was full of sarcasm. Take off her pretty face and the fat that has piled up, and she is just an old woman with a decayed soul. It's a pity that no matter ordinary people or wizards, no matter men or women, they are always willing to be deceived by beautiful appearances. Even if they know that hidden under the beautiful appearance is a bottomless, ugly, and dirty cesspool, they will jump in willingly and immerse themselves in the cesspool, unable to extricate themselves. People always live in a world full of deception, deceiving others, deceiving themselves, and deceiving themselves until the day they die. Taking a step back and sitting back on the white stone bench again, Helia seemed to have lost interest in talking, glanced at Meredith, and picked up the manual again. If you are interested, you can go to Helena to learn how to become beautiful. Maybe you can get a lot of useful things. Looking blankly at Helia, who has already started to study magic, Meredith recalled the face in the mirror when he looked in the mirror, and recalled the bits and pieces that happened recently. Can you really become beautiful by tearing off the beautiful skin of others and sticking it on your own face with magic? Is appearance really that important to me? No, I came back this time to discuss my feelings about fire magic with Senior Helia. Under Helia's surprised gaze, Meredith smiled slightly, smoothed his black robe, and sat beside Helia. After taking another look at her junior, Helia smiled and gathered the hair around her ears. Meredith, welcome back. Chapter 78 Sudden Regret. Without letting Miss and Hina wait too long, after expressing their thoughts of separation, Lester helped Rose put on the clothes that women were reluctant to wear. At Lester's suggestion, Rose no longer wore the low-cut robe that was too revealing before, and changed into the serious and traditional black robe of the wizard. Of course, only Lester knew whether there was purple gauze underwear or dazzling halo under the black robe. After twisting Lester's waist hard, Rose pouted a little dissatisfied. I told you to bring other girls into my house. Haha, as a hostess, you should be more generous, not to mention 2 children. Rose rolled her eyes. So, you don't even let the children go? I really doubt whether you are the incarnation of the devil of bliss. Pinching Rose's shoulders, Lester's heart moved, and he smiled calmly. I'm not that hungry yet. By the way, what does the blissful demon mean? This is also a fragment I saw in some ancient books written by great scholars. Just listen to it as a story. Don't take it seriously. I'll tell you, big pervert. Rose squinted her eyes comfortably, put her bare feet on the bed, and slowly stretched her round jade-like toes. Elemental life will be born in the elemental realm. Magical life will be born in the magic realm. And humans will be born in the material world. Then, what will be born in the spiritual realm? Will there be life born from human emotions and feelings? Living on human spirit? Ancient great scholars raised this question, and they were willing to spend their entire lives to slowly prove it, until they turned into dry bones. At this point, even Rose had a little more respect for the great scholar she was talking about. What a great person. Lester thought of the great people who promoted the development of human society and technology in his previous life. No matter which world they are in, there will always be a group of people who will risk their lives to ignite themselves and illuminate the direction for others to move forward. They are the beacons of human civilization, watching alone in the deepest darkness of the world, and they deserve respect. In their view, there is another mysterious world outside the material world, which the great scholars call the spirit world. Unlike the spirit realm of Ionia, the spirit world is a deeper unknown world. In the void spirit world, there is no life in the traditional sense of the material world or the spiritual world, but there are countless virtual spirits affected by the emotions of humans in the material world. The emotions and feelings generated by humans in the material world will cause certain changes in some specific virtual spirits in the spirit world, allowing the virtual spirits to gain consciousness fluctuations, thereby generating and gaining more emotional and spiritual eating impulses. The virtual spirits that gain consciousness fluctuations will gradually have emotions and desires similar to those of humans, and will be more addicted to the desire energy transmitted from the material world. After accumulating to a sufficient level, the growing virtual spirits can break through the barrier between the spiritual world and the material world, descend into the material world in the form of flesh, and absorb more desires and emotions. Lester, these theories are just groundless speculations without any evidence, and they should not be taken seriously. Then, in order to facilitate research and material collection, the great scholars specifically tested the consciousness fluctuations about lust and pleasure. In fact, it is because, although fear is simple to create, it always scares people to death. So we have to give up the fear test, and choose a more reliable and stable one compared to other emotions. How did the great scholars test it? Lester's mouth twitched, and he had a bad premonition. They use symbols. Through symbols, they carved a large magic circle that can observe the changes in human emotions. The magic circle can convert humans' pleasant emotions into energy levels and express them through the size of the energy value stored in the magic crystal. Their argument is that if emotions can generate energy, energy can be used as a cornerstone of life. Then the energy generated by emotions will go to the spirit world after it is lost for the virtual spirit to absorb and capture. It sounds very fantastic, right? After all, no one knows whether the energy generated by emotions has gone to the spirit world, or maybe to the underworld. Symbols, symbols? Lester nodded, and listened to the story carefully. He slid his hands down, and exerted force suddenly. Rose's pretty face suddenly turned red and her toes tightened. Then, be gentle. They invited hundreds of humans who were willing to reproduce in front of everyone, opened the magic circle, and detected the emotional energy emitted by everyone in joy. Sure enough, huge emotional energy was detected in the magic circle, and the emotional energy quickly dissipated after leaving the range of the magic circle, and disappeared. Then what? Lester asked calmly, while massaging Rose slowly. The result is that when the experiment was about to end in the second half, the detection magic circle suddenly received a strong energy transmitted in the reverse direction, and the magic crystal of the magic circle exploded unexpectedly. Hundreds of people participating in the experiment fell into a coma in the aftermath of the explosion. Rose's breath became shorter and shorter, and her two beautiful legs rubbed unconsciously, getting closer and closer. It's not over yet, is it? You're right. It's not over yet. Hoo bad guy. Do you still want to listen? This is for you to play with. Don't be ungrateful. Standing up and escaping from Lester's clutches, Rose angrily straightened her messy collar, sat down on the edge of the bed, put her feet on the plush chair, and made a promise. Lester sat down and started a foot massage. He is an old technician. Those who participated in the experiment did not suffer any casualties, and all woke up successfully. However, they could no longer experience the happiness brought by joy. Without exception, they became dull and empty shells. Apart from instinctive actions, they lost the ability to express emotions and desires. One day, when even the desire to survive disappeared, those people all died. Therefore, the great scholar concluded that it was the bliss demon, or the joy demon that was descended from the virtual spirit, that devoured their emotions, and made them lose the ability to produce happy emotions. It also proved from another perspective, that there are indeed unknown lives that feed on human emotions. Whether it is the spiritual world or the world of nothingness, there will always be a place where there are unknown terrible lives that feed on devouring human emotions and desires. They also made a prophecy that one day in the future, such spiritual life will descend on the material world and bring about a huge disaster. Lester whispered, poking Rose's soles with his knuckles in a funny way. So you suspect I'm a pleasure demon, isn't it? Who has been bullying me? Rose kicked Lester's chest with her foot, puffed up her mouth angrily, and glared at the man. Lester stared blankly at the charming female mage in front of him. His heart skipped a beat, but the next second the man's eyes suddenly became complicated, and he didn't say anything for a long time, which made Rose feel a little uncomfortable. She quickly retracted her foot, feeling a little uneasy. She always felt that she was seen through and seemed to be wronged, and suddenly felt a little inexplicably wronged. This man bullied her again. What are you looking at? No, it's just that I have some regrets. I thought it was too early, but it's still a little late. The man said something without a beginning or an end, then stood up and turned to leave. What's early or late? Rose was stunned, staring at the closed door. Her fluctuating emotions quickly calmed down, and the woman gradually read the complex emotions in the man's heart. This time, he was really sad. Sad for himself. But I have given it all to him. What is there for him to be sad about? The woman stood up from the bed, sat back on the wooden chair, and looked at the beautiful face in the mirror. His love is real. His doting is real. His worry is real. And his regret seems to be real. Thanks to the 6 readers, cost of a certain cheerful, Sea of the Moon planet, Lagran finds the remaining items, Deep Sea Memory, Deep Sea Fish, Balance, and Tassamet, for their monthly tickets. Thank you all for your recommendations and rewards. Your support is my motivation for writing. I hope you will like this work, and continue to accompany Hangai as always. This chapter describes the views of the Valoran natives on the original demons such as Fiddlesticks, Evelyn, or Tam. Because it is just a legend of a great scholar recorded on an ancient animal skin scroll, it may not be accurate. You can just refer to it. You still have to read the subsequent chapters to see what is going on. Actually, I don't know either. Chapter 79, The Summit of the Most High. Lester put on a smile again and walked downstairs, forgetting the regret in his heart. The 2 girls seemed to be sulking with each other, sitting on either side, pouting and saying nothing. Sisters can't get angry with each other. Come on, shake hands and we'll be reconciled. Lester forced the 2 girls to shake hands, and he always felt that his method was not very effective. After all, compared to children, he mainly dealt with rich women in his previous life. Then again, why are the older and younger ones more difficult to deal with? Let's go. Brother will take you to see the Immortal Fortress. Okay. Hina sullenly took Lester's right hand, and Miss Had also silently took her left hand. The 3 of them walked out the door directly. Seeing that it was already noon, Lester decided to take the Angel Sisters to visit the Conqueror Square first, and go to the commercial street to see if he could get some food. Unexpectedly, the man who appeared in the square soon caused a sensation. The Lord of the Emerald Territory was recognized by many Narxans. Lester was surrounded by the crowd. In desperation, Lester could only take some barbecue and fruit and vegetable wooden baskets from the enthusiastic Narxan hunters and villagers. The Angel Sisters who were surrounded by the crowd were also shocked by such a scene. They grabbed Lester's sleeves one after another, fearing that they would be dragged away and lost in the crowd. The overly enthusiastic Narxans forced Lester to end his trip to the square early. Carrying 2 large baskets of food, Lester shared the delicious food with the Angel Sisters, while taking the 2 sisters to the fortress. Soon Lester met an old acquaintance at the pass of the fortress. Ancient relics. Lord Lester? The one who spoke was Nadaz's royal messenger, Dort, who had scars and pockmarks on his face. Judging from his clothes, it seems that he has been promoted. After looking at the messenger who was different from the past, Lester said politely, Lord Dort, can I go up and take a look? Of course. Melody, you will accompany Lord Lester to avoid misunderstandings due to not knowing Lord Lester. Lord Lester has the right to visit all the passes and walls, understand? All. This is the first independent Lord of Arnaxus to conquer an autonomous territory. You must not neglect him. Understood, Centurion Dort. I guarantee with my life that I will never let anyone offend Lord Lester. A black-haired female soldier with a long spear standing guard behind Dort responded and walked over and followed Lester. After carefully glancing at the 2 sisters held by Lester, Dort's eyes flashed with surprise, but he quickly retracted his gaze and stopped looking. He was indeed lustful, but he also knew what to look at and what not to look at. Lord Lester, do you need me to inform Lord Nadaz? He is not in the fortress now. No, I'll just take a walk. Okay, then I won't bother Lord Lester. Only by standing at the highest point can you understand that in the civilization created by humans, true power and status have always been unattainable. Only the bravest, wisest, most dangerous and cruel people can climb over the mountains that block their way and step onto the peaks that no one can reach. Below the peaks are corpses and bones, as well as wronged souls who have no one to complain about. A general success is the result of the sacrifice of thousands of soldiers. The Hall of the Supreme has never been a place that mortals can reach, unless the mortals are extraordinary. In his previous life, someone said this to Lester, and at this moment, Lester was about to reach the top of the immortal fortress. On the majestic tower, looking at the mottled knife marks and arrow holes on the bricks along the way, Lester seemed to be in the Dark Age ruled by the iron-armored ghost Mordekaiser and the great warlord San Ursula 100 years ago. War, tyranny, destruction, massacre, the extreme anti-human behavior in exchange for greater glory, in the fear of all races, the skeleton throne made of blood and corpses hung high in the air, suppressing the spirit and body of all races and people. That is not the hero who uses the big move to lock people in the small black room and smashes the sledgehammer in the game, but the Dark Overlord who can slaughter the entire Valoran continent with a single command. Even after death, Urzel's soul is immortal because of too much killing, and he became Mordekaiser who is familiar with the underworld Ochan language. Finally, through the low chanting of Ochan language, he bewitched the wizard who wanted to gain power and reappeared in the world with a mottled black iron plate armor. The tyrant once again set off a bloody storm and laid a huge dark empire. The immortal fortress is immortal because its founder is immortal, because the soul that built the immortal fortress is wailing all the time, telling the greatness of the tyrant. The bones of the weak are only used to decorate the skull throne of the strong. If Mordekaiser once again sweeps the material world with his army from the underworld, who among the mortals can stand? And the tyrant built the immortal fortress like this. What is he trying to guard against? My lord, this is the highest point of the immortal fortress. No, it's not high enough. But this is already the highest point. Melody was a little confused and didn't understand what the Lord of the Emerald Territory meant. Lester stopped and looked into the distance. Under the city wall was a crowd of people like ants, and the Pagras Tree Peaks and the Goral Mountains were within reach. At this moment, it seemed as if he had stepped on everything. Looking at the clouds near the horizon, Lester stepped onto the white battlement that was less than half a square meter in size, amid the panic of the female guard and the two sisters. With open arms, Lester faced the breeze and embraced the whole world. If he took half a step forward, he would fall to pieces, and if he took half a step back, he would become nothing. He was savoring the feeling of being on the edge of an abyss. Here, even the most gentle breeze would become his enemy, and the two sisters and the female guard behind him only needed to push him lightly, and he would be reduced to a pile of meat paste if he lost his balance. Just like Mordekaiser who was betrayed by the Arxi clan in LeBlanc, the deadly knife was always stabbed in the back. There was only this position, and there was no room for maneuver. Whether it was family, lover, friend, or subordinate, there was no one he could trust except himself. This was the price of becoming the supreme. Was he ready to pay the price? He savored the mentality of the tyrant, looking at the horizon, and the man's voice suddenly became indifferent. This is the highest point. If you take a wrong step, you will fall into the abyss. Everything in the world is subject to my will. There is no life, only ants. Those who disobey can be killed. Feeling the sudden change in momentum, Melody felt as if the scene in front of her had turned into a sea of blood and corpses, and the man in front of her had become the tyrant who had become a taboo. The female guard subconsciously took 2 steps back, her legs softened, and she fell to the ground. Brother Lester, please come down quickly. It's very dangerous there. Standing behind her, Zinna clutched her skirt. Her palms were full of sweat, and she was so anxious that tears were about to fall, but she still didn't dare to speak loudly. She tightly tightened her lips, fearing that if she spoke louder, she would scare the man in front of her and make him fall off the wall. Don't think too much. I won't quarrel with my sister in the future, okay? Miss Ha said hesitantly in a low voice, with undisguised worry on her face, and her heart was beating. Hearing the two sisters' calls behind him, Lester was startled, lowered his head, savoring the warmth at the moment. His cold and hard heart softened. Lester sighed, then quickly changed to a sad look, turned around and jumped off the wall, and came to the two sisters. Miss Ha, are you serious? Don't quarrel with your sister anymore? Looking at her tearful sister, Miss Ha hummed sullenly, lowered her head and whispered, who knows you, what kind of crazy thing you will do. Thanks to the book friend, if your name is long, there will be to read along, for the reward of 1500 book coins and monthly tickets. I have been looking for these 2 words for a long time. Thanks to the book friend, for the reward of 100 coins. Thanks to the lovely 201906161232012228 right square bracket, and several book friends for their monthly tickets. Everyone is so enthusiastic. Guy is almost unable to bear it. Yeah. Chapter 80 Celebration Night Dance. The afterglow of the sunset completely disappeared, and the hot bonfires burning in the inner and outer cities of the immortal fortress were the real celebration night of Naxos. Young men and women walked together, dancing rhythmic tribal war dances around the bonfire, expressing pure and passionate love to each other. There were juggling tribal warriors who either breathed fire or kept throwing 3 sharp axes amid the exclamations of the crowd, and each time they caught them with their hands in danger, winning applause and cheers. The middle-aged Naxan people who claimed to be gourmet hunters took out the ingredients that had been prepared long ago from home with a smile, and showed their cooking skills on the small fire at the door with iron pots, and distributed the food they made with their heart to every enthusiastic spectator. Soon the food was divided up, but the cook looked happy. Children with long braids ran around in groups in the crowd, looking for inadvertent surprises, eating and drinking everywhere, and playing with their peers. No matter where they were all having fun tonight. Even the Dimatians and Shirimans who happened to come to the immortal fortress had to admit that the barbaric culture of Naxos was indeed unique. Naxos was not just a synonym for blood and violence, nor was it just a bandit who would chop off heads. At least, the food was okay. The most lively place was still on the Conqueror's Square. Nadars and others discussed and built a square wooden platform without any shelter in the center of the square to provide a stage for performers of talent shows. After a dozen specially selected Naxan beauties in cool clothes finished their war dance, an Naxan swordsman with a two-handed sword and painted face began to show his superb swordsmanship. After another swordsman with a real sword came on stage to compete with him, the two sides ended with a thrilling move, jumped off the stage amid the applause of the crowd, and gave the stage to the next group of people. Dong 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 dong. The drums made of cowhide kept vibrating under the rhythmic beating of the drummer, making a heart-pounding drum sound. The player holding the wooden flute blew out the joy and enthusiasm in his heart, placing his emotions in the melodious flute sound, allowing the audience to experience the music style of Naxos together. After all the routine programs were over, the stage was empty. Under the gaze of the crowd, Nadals walked onto the stage and pressed his hand towards the noisy Conqueror Square, and the square soon became quiet. Today is not only our carnival, but also everyone's carnival, and the carnival of all the guests who came to the immortal fortress. The night is still long, but there is still a lot of barbecue and wine. This is the celebration stage. Anyone can come up to show their talents, and they can also invite their companions to come up and perform together. The night is far from over. This will belong to the truly brave, and I will be the first. Taking the leather wine bottle from his waist, Nadals drank it in one gulp, pulled his collar, and the barbarian smiled and grinned. La 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 Naxos. La 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 barbarian warriors. La 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 Roxy. Lu la 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 victory. With everyone stunned, Nadars began the terrible death chant. The terrible sound made many people present feel that their hearts were not well. They didn't know that if it was more serious, it would be called myocardial infarction. Finally, after a few minutes of painful torture, someone rolled his eyes and fainted on the spot, foaming at the mouth, causing a cry of surprise. Good. Finally someone is drunk with my voice. Nadars grinned and was about to sing another song, but was dragged off the wooden stage by Stender. Soon, Stender walked up again and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Even he vaguely felt the call of the undead. Thank you for the wonderful performance, Lord Nadars. Facing the dull eyes of the crowd, even the generous Stender couldn't help but feel guilty, wondering if he should exchange the excitement for injuries. Next, the stage will be handed over to. As he was speaking, Stender accidentally saw a man standing in the crowd, feeding another black-haired little girl with crescent eyes under the stares of Rose and the blonde girl, and couldn't help but change his tone. Our Lord of the Emerald Territory, the great pioneering general of Naxos, the conqueror of the Nokmachi Plains, Lord Lester. Lester. Where is my Lord Lester? AWW. An Naxan woman as strong as a bear covered her little heart, looking around nervously in the roar, waving her little fists that could kill a bull. Following Stender's sight, someone soon found Lester hiding in the crowd and feeding Sinner a banana. There. Lord Lester. Stender smiled at the helpless Lester and took the opportunity to walk down the wooden platform. At this time, Lester was surrounded by the crowd and could not escape. Lord Lester, would you please dance with me? Pushing through the crowd like a bull, the strong Narxan woman came to Lester breathlessly, looking forward to it. Lester, who never judged others by their appearance, would certainly not refuse a reasonable invitation. He was about to agree, but he saw Rose suddenly blocking him. The man was stunned. I'm sorry, Lester has already accepted my invitation. I'm afraid I can't dance with you. Is that so? Since Lady Rose invited Lord Lester first, there's nothing I can do. The woman naturally recognized that the beautiful woman in front of her was the mage of the Black Rose. Seeing that she had no chance, the woman could only give up the idea of dancing with Lester with regret. Ms. Rose. Lord Lester. Let's dance. Some people in the crowd were making a fuss, which attracted the approval of many repeaters. Staring at Rose, who was standing in front of him, Lester, who had come to his senses, naturally did not lose his previous demeanor. Recalling the courtship dance that the Narxans had performed before, he felt that he could also dance it, so he took the lead in extending his right hand to the woman in front of him. Rose, can you please dance with me? Of course, my Lester. Holding Lester's right hand, the two walked side by side towards the wooden platform. Looking up, swallowing a big mouthful of banana in one breath, Zina, with a pursed mouth, felt that even banana from the eastern continent was not fragrant. Standing on the wooden platform, the two people who let go of their hands stared at each other and felt each other's feelings. Finally, Lester, wearing a tight black suit in the style of the Dark Ages, took the lead in challenging his demeanor, waving his arms, and began to step on the wooden platform regularly with the movements of a Japanese sumo wrestler going on stage, making heavy footsteps, like a gorilla seeking a mate. Rose, wearing a slim black dress, smiled and began to do the same movements with a half-beat difference. The male and female gorillas stared at each other, gradually synchronized their frequencies, and began to spread their legs and circle around until they got closer and closer and held each other's hands. Oh, oh, oh. The audience cheered excitedly as they watched the two people dancing the standard Narxan courtship dance on the wooden stage. This is a Narxan barbarian courtship dance, expressing love with the most primitive dance steps on the wooden stage. I still think that this dance is not suitable for the two of us. It's too stupid, like two gorillas. Pucci, it's originally imitating gorillas. Then what dance do you think is suitable for the two of us? Lester stretched out his hand to Rose, who was smiling like a flower. I'll teach you a new way of dancing. Keep your upper body straight and lift your heels. Leave the rest to me. You just need to learn my steps. Tango. Okay. The moment the two gorillas held hands, they turned into humans, and a dance style that everyone had never seen before was presented to everyone. The lively scene suddenly became silent, and everyone seemed to see two overlapping black swans dancing in the night. Chapter 81, The Betrayer's Lies. Right below the Emerald Territory, south of the Silver Mountains, in the village of Borum, a scream sounded, and Ulysses sat up from the bed, staring at the moonlight outside the window for a long time without being able to come back to his senses. His best friend has been missing for more than half a month, and until now, there is still no sign of him alive or dead. Sighing, Ulysses got dressed and decided to sit in the yard. Ulysses, the Narxan barbarians have invaded. Hurry up and pick up your weapons, and prepare for battle. The urgent voice of the night watchman came from outside the gate. What? After a start, Ulysses took out the iron sword he had specially asked the blacksmith to make from under the bed, listening to the hurried footsteps outside the door. Holding the cold hilt, Ulysses calmed down a little. Everyone listen. This place has been occupied by the Emerald Territory of Narxus. Don't resist in vain. Put down your weapons and you can live. Before opening the wooden door, Ulysses heard the barbarian language from the north of the mountain, as well as the collision of armor and heavy footsteps. Narxans? How did they get here? Did they cross Yangayang Mountain? How is that possible? Ulysses didn't have much time to react, as someone had already roughly knocked on the gate with a crossbar. Come out, people inside. Of course, the door would not be opened. Ulysses, holding the iron sword, looked around, but could not find any other chance to escape, because the wall was too high and there was no secret passage for him, so he could not help but secretly complain. Bump. As soon as the words fell, a flash of dark red light and shadow violently broke the door, and the wooden bolt as thick as a forearm was directly broken. While the soldier who broke through the door had not yet stood firm, Ulysses handed over the iron sword in his hand with a fierce look, and stabbed it straight into the chest of the armor. With a bang, the iron sword that pierced the dark red armor broke with a sound, and the hilt flew to the ground. Ulysses, who was not prepared for the impact, had his wrist dislocated instantly, and the man covered his wrist and cried. The soldier was about to chop off Ulysses' head, but was stopped by a man in dark red armor the next moment. Lady Margaret said before that we should leave as many people alive as possible. He has lost the ability to resist, so let's leave him for now. Yes. In a daze, Ulysses was tied up with ropes. When the pain in his wrist eased, he found that he had been led by the soldiers to the center of the village. Dozens of villagers from Borum village were tied up with hemp ropes and their hands were tied together. There were neatly dressed women crying loudly, obviously because their husbands had just died. More than 20 Narxans equipped with sophisticated equipment surrounded the periphery, and two heavy armored soldiers wearing terrible dark red armor stood beside the village chief with ferocious dark red swords in their hands. Soon, Ulysses noticed Natividad, who was extremely pale, in front of the village chief, and next to the Narxan soldiers. That was his good friend who had been missing for more than half a month, but now he was standing next to the Narxans. Ulysses' face turned pale, and his eyes were full of disbelief. You unscrupulous Narxans. We have never offended you. Why do you raise your butcher knife against us? Why do you attack us? The old village chief glared at the plate-armored warrior standing beside him with a sad face. Sadly, he couldn't even see the face under the other's helmet, just like his own warrior sword couldn't even break the other's armor. Moreover, how did Narxus suddenly appear in the village? The village chief couldn't help but look at the silent Natividad. Lifting the face shield covering his face, a cold face appeared in front of the village chief. There are no so many whys, old man. This is conquest. All you need to do is obey, and the fate of the rebels is only death. Bah. Narxan barbarian bastard. You will never conquer your grandfather. Grandpa, one day, I will whine. A hot-tempered male villager began to curse, but the next moment his mouth was stuffed with rags, with a look of horror. Find a better place for this grandfather to settle down, so that the wild dogs won't starve. Yes. The villagers of Borum watched the fellow villager who had just insulted the Narxans being dragged away by the soldiers, and their faces were filled with fear. Narxus is an inclusive country. We can accept anyone who is willing to obey Narxus, and accept Narxan rule and ideas, but Narxus will never accept personal insults. I hope you will pay attention to your identity, and don't be greedy for a moment of pleasure, and forget what it means to speak ill of others. Natividad, the rest is up to you. Yes, sir. The last glimmer of hope also disappeared in the night wind. Ulysses stared blankly at his good friend who betrayed the village, and began to persuade the village chief under the guidance of the Narxan soldiers. Village chief, we are just a small village with less than 100 people. Even if we add the surrounding villages, there are only more than 300 people. We can't resist the Narxans. The soldiers behind me are just two 10-man teams of the Emerald Territory of Narxus. They have more than 30 such teams. The army alone is larger than ours. We are no match at all. Obeying the rule of Narxus is our best outcome. I have seen the development of the Emerald Territory, which is much stronger than ours. As long as we join the big family of Narxus, we will not be threatened again. Many people can eat enough, and maybe we can get military merit. The old village chief looked at the betrayer in front of him with grief and anger, biting his lips until blood came out, and raised his finger, as if he wanted to curse, but he couldn't say it. He still has 3 young wives, and the key is that he is also afraid of death. Ulysses couldn't stand it anymore, and questioned his former good friend and current enemy, Natividad. How can you be worthy of the village that raised you? The village chief has watched you grow up, but you betrayed everyone and brought Narxus to invade the village. Don't you feel guilty? Feeling the sharp gaze that seemed to be cutting him into pieces, Natividad lowered his head. Ulysses, I have also thought about this problem, and later I found that we actually have no choice, because the rise of Naxos is a foregone conclusion. In the north of Yanggyang Mountain, the two most powerful forces, Demacia and Naxos, have divided up most of the continent. Demacia chose to stick to its independence on the west coast, and will not send troops at all, let alone support us in resisting Naxos. Shurima in the south is also unrealistic. They are a mess themselves. Ulysses, if we have any chance, I will not make such a choice. The fact is that we have no way out. Even without me, Naxos will conquer other lands, and soldiers will set foot in our villages and make this place theirs. Looking up, the shame on Natividad's face disappeared, and he was more determined. We have no way. Traitor. Stop talking bullshit. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 80 To the first military meeting of the Supreme Command. The celebration of Naxos was over. Everyone who came to the Immortal Bastion, whether Naxan or foreigner, spent 3 unforgettable nights. The most talked about thing was the beautiful dance performed by Lester, the first independent lord of Naxos, the conqueror of the Nokmachi Plains, the ruler of the Mombians, the master of the Emerald Territory, and the beautiful Black Rose Mage Lady Rose on the first night. The beautiful dance steps that had never been seen before shocked everyone. From the dance posture and rhythm alone, everyone could see that the new dance created by the magical lord had a mature system. This system successfully subverted the previous definition of dance, reinterpreted what beauty was, and also gave the lore and artists a new understanding of the dress that should be worn for dancing, at least not bare-chested. In comparison, the previous Naxan barbarian war dance and courtship dance seemed a bit stupid and funny, and not worthy of being elegant. There are also rumors that some big merchants from Demacia and Shurima wanted to pay to send people to learn dance from the Lord of the Emerald Territory, but they were politely rejected by the Lord. This made the Naxans happy. After all, it was something created by the Lord of their own country, and it couldn't be easily learned by others. Their own people haven't enjoyed it enough. In short, the celebration of the establishment of the war group in Naxos came to an end, and the Immortal Bastion began martial law again, and entered the previous alert mode. The Immortal Bastion, the former fortress meeting room, is now the Naxan war group's supreme command. In Lester's opinion, there are many unfamiliar faces sitting at the conference table this time. They should be the leaders of some powerful tribes or war groups. From this point of view, this is a relatively important military meeting, and he really has to participate with Rose. Lord Lester, the dance you created is really shocking. Only you and Ms. Rose can control such a beautiful and clean dance. A man with a single braid and tribal tattoos on his face complimented Lester. Beside Lester, Rose's face showed a faint smile. Yes, before I saw the dance created by Lord Lester, I always thought that the war dance of our tribe was the most beautiful. Another fat black man with a somewhat plump figure smiled and joined the topic. Lord Lester, Nadals asked speculatively, does this dance have anything to do with your past? Naturally, knowing that the past Nadals was talking about was his identity as an ancient survivor, Lester did not deny it. He smiled friendly, which made several men stare blankly. Yes, this dance, you can call it tango. Sugar dog. What a strange name. Lord Lester, can I ask you how to establish an independent territory? How should we rule foreigners? With swords or whips? Is it more effective to chop off the big head or the small head? Lord Lester, in addition to Ms. Rose, how many wives do you have? How can I be as good as you, and how can I coordinate the relationship between my wives? Hearing someone say this, Rose frowned and secretly memorized the appearance of the speaker. My lord, I want to invest in your territory, but I don't know. Faced with the chaotic questions, Lester could only put on a polite smile and keep silent. Well, it's rare for everyone to get together, so let's discuss the future development plan of Naxos first. Seeing that more and more warband leaders were asking Lester for advice and trying to get close to him, Stander, who had become the military staff of the Naxan High Command, could only knock on the table and interrupt everyone's conversation. Ahem. Stander is right. I declare that the first military meeting of the Narxan High Command has officially begun. Nadals patted the table and announced loudly. Good. Lord Nadals is very energetic. A warband leader stood up and echoed loudly. Ahem. Lord Dirksiu, don't talk when I'm talking. Oh. Dirksiu sat down quickly again. After looking around at everyone, Nadals, who was sitting at the main seat at the long square table, looked at Lester, who was sitting first on his right. He nodded to Lester and rose before speaking. Take the map. A soldier put the animal skin map of a Loran continent that had been prepared long ago on the long table. Lester looked at it carefully. The lines and graphics on the map were barely at the level of Meredith. It seemed that the mapping technology of this world still needed innovation. This is our base camp, the Immortal Fortress. Nadal stood up and pointed to the circle marked in Narxan on the map with the short wooden stick in his hand. The others looked at it attentively. Since the founding of the country, we have repelled a large number of bandits and defeated many barbarians who wanted to compete with us for the Immortal Fortress, including the two most powerful barbarian tribes in the north, the Mostet barbarian tribe and the Apol barbarian tribe. Until today, our Narxus has finally gained a foothold in the Immortal Fortress. After the war group, the various tribes of Narxus have been completely integrated. Not to mention the equipment, we already have a military force of more than 500 people. Relying on the catch of the underground river and the fertile farmland of the western plains, it is more than enough to feed tens of thousands of people. We must encourage childbirth and increase the population as soon as possible. Although our hometown of Larx, or Nox, translation problem, has been destroyed in the Rune War, we have now become one of the most powerful forces on the Valoran continent. This result is inseparable from our unity. The only ones who can compete with us are Demacia on the west coast and General Oran. As long as there is enough time to develop, the rest of the small forces are nothing more than chickens and dogs, and they will not be our opponents at all. Glancing around at everyone, Nadal said in a deep voice, Narxus has now entered a period of stable development. Before we learn about your suggestions for the future development of Narxus, let Stander explain the situation around Narxus. Taking the short wooden stick from Nadal's, Stander pointed to the circle west of the Emerald Territory, near the Conqueror Sea. This is Demacia, an independent large settlement near the west coast, with its own culture and powerful army. Secret agents have shown that Demacia is rich in white forbidden magic stones, and the entire state is built in the forbidden magic stone forest. Within the range of the forbidden magic stone forest, all mages will lose their magic perception and become ordinary people. This is a very serious problem for our Narx and Black Rose mages. Looking at Rose, who was non-committal, Stander continued. The general of Demacia is named Oran. Oran is an excellent leader with rich military experience. He once led the army he trained across most of the Valoran continent. He defeated many bandits and gangsters along the way with his well-trained army and soldiers, and allowed the travel group to successfully reach the deserted west coast. After reaching conditions with the local mountain people, he established Demacia on the west coast together with Jarvandark and several other travel group leaders. Up to now, Demacia has a mature military system and powerful equipment. Their smelting technology is not inferior to ours. In terms of equipment, we cannot gain equipment advantages like we do when fighting other barbarians. If we fight them at this time, we will lose more than we gain. Thanks to the monthly ticket support of several book friends, we swear to be irreconcilable with gambling and drugs. The demonic blade of the demon fox, the second dimension fox, 6RR, RRRR. Cold winter wind, thanks to Jinx's rocket, one of the blood moons. When I woke up early in the morning, I took a quick look at the number of recommendation votes. It was very fast, so I knew that it was a great honor for everyone to support the book. I really want to put it on the shelves as soon as possible so that I can become a qualified death-inducing person like everyone else and serve everyone a bowl of moldy soup. Finally, I have to say one more thing. Hangai uploaded the Valoran topographic map I drew in the comments section. You can save it. If you feel the locations and plots are confusing, just look at the picture. It should be better, right? Chapter 83 Surrounding Situation and Future Policy. Plus, the Demacians have no desire to expand. In the words of Lord Leicester, the Lord of the Emerald Territory, the Dalmatians will probably stop west of the Green Fang Peak. Plus, the Emerald Territory happens to be located in the Nokmachi Plains between the Immortal Bastion and Demacia. So it's not a wise thing for us to expand westwards and waste precious time and manpower on the Dalmatians. Especially since the Dalmatians have been guarding against us, and have been building watchtowers and sentry towers in the border areas. It is even more difficult to attack, and we are wasting our own potential in vain. After a pause, Stender pointed to the Dalmo Plains north of the Pagras Tree Peaks. This is our hometown. After we went south to defeat and seal the Dark Tyrant, our hometown was occupied by other barbarians. After losing the Ubal tribe and the Mostek tribe, most of the barbarian forces on the Dalmor Plain have lost the power to fight us. Perhaps we can quickly go north in the form of a war group, open up the north, and retake the Dalmor Plain. Of course, this still requires the support of intelligence, and we must not be reckless. If all goes well, after stabilizing the construction of fortresses in the north, we can move westward and attack Freljord, plundering people and women from Freljord as slaves, and using them to strengthen ourselves. After speaking, Stender's short wooden stick moved from Freljord, where nothing was marked, to the bottom. Lester noticed that the word Shurima was highlighted on the southern continent on the map. The southern continent south of Valoran is the gathering place of ancient Shurima. Although Shurima has died, the legacy left by Shurima has nourished the people there. There are relatively developed desert tribes and powerful warriors in the southern continent. Before there is a stable logistical supply, it is best not to fight across the sea. Moreover, it is difficult to manage a vast desert, which is of no benefit to us for the time being. Finally, Stander pointed at the land and archipelago on the right side of Valoran. We still know nothing about Ionia, our strange neighbor, but we have learned from merchants who have come from afar that Ionia is a very powerful and wealthy country. The people there live and work in peace and contentment. Everyone has magical qualifications, but they are often disturbed by ghosts. There is a group of Ionians who spontaneously eliminate ghosts to maintain order there. I don't think we need to know what is there in the short term. Putting down the short wooden stick, Stander's face was serious. This is all the information we have at present. Nadals clapped his hands and motioned everyone to sit down again. Most of Lord Stender's sources of information are reliable, so you can speak freely. The dark-skinned middle-aged fat man was dozing off and spoke first. I'll listen to your opinions. Just tell me when you've reached an agreement. He began to snore, which made Nadal's face darken. He winked at the guards. Soon, 2 guards carried the struggling black fat man out of the meeting room. In my opinion, we should join forces with Lord Leicester to eliminate Demacia on the west coast as soon as possible. Since they have become an obstacle to us, we need to nip the Dalmatians in the bud to prevent them from becoming more powerful in the future. Dulciu, I don't agree with you. The man with a tattoo on his face and a single braid retorted. The Dalmatians are a tough nut to crack. We shouldn't focus our energy on the bones. We all understand one thing at the dinner table. Eat the edible meat first, and then gnaw on the bones. Otherwise, by the time you gnaw on the bones, the meat will have been eaten by others. Even if we go to great lengths to defeat Demacia, a few years will be enough time for a new Demacia North to emerge on the Dalmor Plains, or a Demacia South to emerge on the coast south of Valoran. It is very stupid to leave the meat and instead gnaw on the bones. I agree with Lord Ursus. We should take over the Dalmor Plains first, instead of crossing half of Valoran to go west to fight Demacia. I also agree that we should take the north first. Reclaiming the grassland that belongs to us is a priority. We can also get pastures and horse farms there. I think it would be better to conquer Shurima in the south first. After all, I have never seen a desert, and I've wanted to see what a desert looks like since I was a child. As soon as the voice fell, the big man of the war group who proposed the valuable suggestion of marching into Shurima struggled to be mercilessly carried out of the meeting room by the guards in the eyes of everyone looking at him as a fool. I hope everyone will speak carefully and don't waste your opportunity to sit here. Nadals reminded. In the heated discussion, Rose and Lester never spoke, but quietly held hands under the table and stroked each other's palms with their fingers. After more than an hour, seeing that everyone had almost reached an agreement, Nadal spoke. Ms. Rose, Lord Lester, I wonder what you think about the Northern Expedition? Holding Lester's hand, Rose, who seemed to be calm, supported her chin with her other hand and spoke first. The Black Rose will provide a certain amount of mage support to the Narxan war group, but the mages of the Black Rose must have independent power to act, and are also eligible for military merit. Nadal smiled after looking at Stender. Of course, the Black Rose mages are also members of Narxus, and they are naturally eligible for military merits. However, the right to act independently is still too free and undisciplined, right? The Black Rose and Narxus are now one. Rose raised her eyebrows, and before she could speak, she felt her palms warm, and then she heard Lester beside her speak. Lord Nadars, when occupying the Nokmachi Plain, the Black Rose mages played a decisive role. This was all based on their autonomy. If I had interfered, I might not have achieved such a good effect. Mages have different ideas and decisions from ordinary people like us. They often have a broader vision and ideas. In my opinion, it is not a wise behavior for outsiders to command insiders. I think all the adults present should understand how much they know about magic. Hearing Lester speak for her, Rose's face remained calm, but she secretly scratched Lester's palm, and soon the two of them intertwined their fingers. Well, Lord Lester might be right. Nadals observed the expressions on everyone's faces, and finally gathered to stand beside him, nodding gently. Since Lester publicly supported Rose, this matter could only be temporarily abandoned. Then the mages of the Black Rose will follow the war group as assistants. Although they don't need to accept orders, if they want to act on the battlefield, they must negotiate and communicate with the leader of the war group. The merits will be calculated according to the auxiliary effect. Ms. Rose, do you think this is okay? Rose nodded with a smile. That's great. That's good. By the way, Lord Lester, do you want to participate in the pioneering war of the Damo Plain? Shaking his head, Lester said sincerely, my territory has just been established, and there are still many affairs to deal with. In addition, I have to guard against the Dalmatians in the west. I will not participate in this northern expedition. Hearing Lester say this, Nadal's smile finally became more sincere. Thanks to the editor, there are 2 more recommendations next week, one for the web version, and one for the client version. The client version is still highly recommended by the editor. This time I really felt what it means to be like a crow on a plane. Fog. Come on, give me 2 punches to wake me up. Take off. Those who have monthly tickets should save them for the 29th. There will be double monthly tickets and crowdfunding monthly tickets at that time. Then I will give them a good fight. Chapter 84 Dragon Bird Attack. Immortal Fortress, Blackthorn Rose Street. At the door of Lady Rose's mansion, Lester hugged Rose, as if he wanted to rub the woman in front of him into his body. In the parked carriage, the square-faced sorceress was meditating. Outside the carriage, the 2 little girls, Miss Hab and Hinna, stared at the 2 people who were stuck together, with their 2 pairs of little ears erect, unwilling to miss any details. I'm leaving again. You always have to leave. Just like you will leave too. The 2 were silent for a while, and Lester took a step back and stared at the woman's pretty face. Can't you really come with me to live in Emerald Territory? In Emerald Territory, I built an identical home for you. It's a home for the 2 of us. I can't get used to living alone. Rose's heart trembled. She felt sweet at first, and then felt a little complicated, but her face showed a teasing and relaxed look. Then I must look forward to it. Mainly because I'm too busy recently. I still have courses to teach at the Black Rose Academy. I'll go there after I'm done with this. Maybe I can stay for a while longer. With a little disappointment on his face, Lester seemed to have adjusted his mentality quickly. He smiled, let go of the woman in front of him, and kissed her cherry lips gently. When I'm not busy, I'll take you to the Urus Mountains to see the snow and build a big snowman for you. The man's carriage gradually went away. Rose's eyes were a little absent-minded. After a long time, the woman smiled self-deprecatingly and turned back to the house. In the carriage, Miss Hab and Hinna, who had experienced the Immortal Fortress celebration and visited the walls of the Immortal Fortress, were a little excited. In addition, they secretly learned a lot from the female mage. When the 2 girls looked at each other, they always felt that each other had grown up a lot. How was the trip? Did you enjoy it? In order to prevent the two little girls from shaking their butts, Lester specially put a thick animal fur blanket on the side of the carriage this time, and Meredith and Lester themselves were also much more comfortable. Happy unhappy. The younger sister and the older sister had a disagreement again. Lester touched Hina's cute little head and looked at the dissatisfied blonde girl with amusement. Miss Hap, what's wrong with you? Did you not eat the delicious food? Or did you miss some fun things? With her hands folded in front of her chest, Miss Hap pouted and looked unhappy. You promised to accompany me and my sister, but you always stayed with Sister Rose and danced with Sister Rose. Lester was stunned. It's okay for Rose to be jealous of a little girl, but why would a little girl of 6 or 7 be jealous of an adult? Is the little girl born by Miss Ura, who was chosen by the righteous star spirit, so precocious? Obviously, she was just a greedy little kid not long ago. Miss Hap, it's my fault. I apologize to you. He sincerely apologized to the little girl, but saw that the little girl opened her arms and had a look of you know what to do on her face. With a helpless smile, Lester still held Miss Hap on his lap, allowing the little girl to find a good mount comfortably. Brother Lester, I want one too. Hina gently pulled Lester's sleeve, her big eyes flickering with a pitiful expression, like an abandoned puppy. Under Meredith's amused gaze, Lester once again held the black-haired little girl on his lap, one on the left and one on the right, just enough to avoid a fight. A bowl of water must be balanced. When you go back this time, remember to tell your dad about what happened in the past few days. Your dad loves you very much and has done a lot for you. You must also respond to your dad's love and care about him more, understand? Got it? Yeah. Slightly relieved, Lester turned his head to look at the female wizard sitting opposite. I couldn't find you at this celebration, and I said I wanted to take you for a walk. Don't you have anything important to do? Do you need help? Meredith was a little surprised that Lester would suddenly pay attention to her, and then shook her head gently. It's nothing. Such a secular celebration has no meaning for us mages who pursue power. This time I went back to see my senior in the Black Rose Academy and consulted her about some issues related to the fire-based black magic. Hearing the Black Rose Academy from Meredith, Lester became more interested. If it's convenient, can you tell me about the Black Rose Academy? I thought the female mage would agree, but I didn't expect the female mage to shake her head with an apologetic look. I'm sorry, Lord Lester, the news of the Black Rose Academy is kept confidential. Only with the consent of Ms. Rose, the Black Rose Magic Instructor Group or the Blood Magic Instructor can we have the right to pass on information to the outside world. Is that so? Lester didn't mean to embarrass Meredith. Instead, he admired the female mage's good character of keeping her mouth shut and keeping her promises. As if she noticed the admiration in the man's eyes, the female mage turned her head slightly. The carriage ran slowly on the rugged road, followed by 5 pack horses carrying goods and logistical supplies. Under the guard of more than 20 soldiers, the team soon arrived near the Valoran plain after 7 days and nights. When the sun began to set, the 4 people sitting in the carriage heard the soldiers' exclamation. The dragon bird is coming. It's the Silverwing. It's attacking the team. Crossbowman, aim at the target. Shoot. The terrible whistling sound disappeared, and the wailing of the horses soon disappeared, followed by the clanging sound of the soldiers drawing their weapons. Can you deal with the dragon bird? My magic is all range oriented, and it is difficult to target the agile dragon bird, but interference can still be done. Meredith was about to leave the carriage, but Lester held his shoulder and said in a deep voice, if you can't handle it, you just need to protect Miss Hap and Hina. Don't worry about anything else. If something unexpected happens to me, you have to send them back to the territory safely, understand? You must send them back to the Emerald Territory and protect them. Meredith nodded after taking a deep look at Lester, who didn't allow any objection. The man turned around and gave the 2 little girls some instructions. Miss Hap, Hina, you 2 stay in the carriage, don't show your heads, and listen to Sister Meredith. Before the 2 little guys responded, Lester heard the scream of the carriage driver. My lord, be careful. 2 huge silver bird claws easily lifted the roof of the carriage, and after throwing away the roof that had turned into rotten wood chips, they grabbed Lester in the carriage fiercely. Feeling the strong wind from above, Lester felt cold all over. Relying on instinct, Lester hugged the frightened Miss Hap and Hina and rushed out of the carriage. Meredith was not hurt because she was not the target of the dragon bird. The female wizard thought quickly for a second and began to cast a spell. Outside the carriage, 2 horses had died, their soft bellies were torn apart, their internal organs and blood were all over the ground, and the rest of the horses were struggling and jumping under the pull of the soldiers. The frightened horses completely lost their minds, and the carriage could not move forward. Ugh. Hey. Hey. After failing to hit the target, the huge silver-winged dragon bird raised its body and dived towards Lester again, rushing straight towards Lester, its background eyes full of excitement. Book friends who have been following the latest chapters and are preparing to pay for subscriptions, please raise your paws here, and Hangai will roughly count the number of people. Chapter 85 The hospitable dragon bird welcomes you. Facing the silver bird claws that were half the size of his body, Lester, who only had 2 magic steel daggers on his body, had no effective means to deal with them. Lord Lester. The steel swords of the Black Iron Guard soldiers could not touch the silver-winged dragon bird that was high above, but the crossbow arrows of the shadow crossbowmen successfully bit the silver-winged dragon bird's soft abdomen and wings. The dragon bird made a painful cry, but it did not affect its movement. Under the silver claws, Lester pushed Miss Howe and Hinner away, no longer suppressing the real power of his body, turned around and jumped high, narrowly avoiding the claws, and hit the dragon bird's soft lower neck with an uppercut, then hugged the dragon bird's lower neck hair tightly, adjusting his body posture. The dragon bird's scaly scissor-shaped long tail swept over the crossbowman who wanted to continue shooting, and when it was about to hit the crossbowman, it quietly retracted its power, only knocking down a few crossbowmen. After the crossbowman fell to the ground, the dragon bird waved its huge wings and began to take off, climbing to a height of 10 meters above the ground in just a few seconds. Brother Lester. Climbing up from the ground in a panic, Hinner and Miss Howe screamed and looked up, only to find that the man who saved them was getting farther and farther away, and finally turned into a black dot. Extremely sad, the 2 little girls began to cry loudly, always thinking that they would never see Brother Lester again. Looking at Lester in the sky, Meredith could only disperse the magic array that was about to be guided. The female mage took a deep breath and took over the command. Don't panic. Follow the instructions of Lord Lester, and I will command from now on. The somewhat bewildered soldiers calmed down and quietly looked at the calm female mage. After carrying the 2 crying little girls back into the carriage without a roof, Meredith gave orders to the soldiers of the Narkson Black Iron Guard and the Shadow Crossbowmen. The target is Emerald Territory, keep going. But the Lord. The Lord is fine, let's keep going. The target is Emerald Territory. This is Lord Lester's arrangement. Do you want to go against it? Staring coldly at the soldier who wanted to raise objections, Meredith began to guide the spell again. If he refutes again, Meredith will kill the soldier without hesitation, even if the other party is thinking about Lester. Yes. I have been flying for a long time, and my pants are cold. If Ash is here, she will definitely shout I'm freezing. There is a whistling wind in my ears, 100 meters high below me, and a steep peak on the ground. This is the supreme blessing for patients with acrophobia and constipation. It can effectively relieve the difficulty of excretion, and it can be passed all the way to the bottom to moisten the earth. Lester has no doubt that, if he falls from this height, he will become a cute Lester mud sauce. The premise of winning the battle is that you must survive. If you defeat the dragon bird but die here, then the victory is meaningless. Lester gave up the idea of stabbing the dragon bird's neck with the magic steel dagger and decided to remain unchanged in the face of all changes. Yes. Woo woo woo, woo woo woo. You guy, you still have the nerve to feel wronged? Inexplicably hearing the meaning of the dragon bird's grievance, Lester directly used his head to headbutt the dragon bird's neck. The dragon bird shook its head and continued to flap its wings. After the farce, Lester, who relaxed his nerves, began to observe his environment. Although he did not look down on the specific landforms of the Valoran continent in this life, with his understanding of the game in his previous life, Lester could still recognize that he was approaching the Urus Mountains near the northern foothills, a location close to the Freljord Icefield. If you want to reach this location from the Emerald Territory, you need to cross many high mountains, which cannot be done in 10 days or half a month, not to mention the various monsters that you encounter. Seeing that the dragon bird flew over the Valoran plain in just a few hours, Lester had a new understanding of the future Demacia dragon bird rider. Not to mention the combat effectiveness of the dragon bird rider. The dragon bird rider has an incomparable advantage in terms of scouting the battlefield and transmitting information. If used properly, the dragon bird rider can also play a role in harassing the front line. Under the pursuit of the dragon bird rider, I'm afraid that no one can easily escape from the battlefield. As the altitude rose again, the temperature began to drop suddenly, and frost condensed on Lester's eyelashes. In order to prevent himself from freezing, Lester began to vibrate his muscles and limbs slightly, pulling the dragon bird's fluff left and right, moving his body, and speeding up blood circulation. After flying for a few more hours, the silver-winged dragon bird suddenly lowered its altitude and entered the gliding mode. Lester guessed that he should have entered the northern mountainous area of the Nokmachi Plain. Woo woo tight. After circling twice in the sky, the dragon bird landed steadily on a snowy peak. It seemed to have forgotten that there was a great lord hanging around its neck. The silver-winged dragon bird folded its wings, shook its head and tail, walked into the huge cave, stood in front of a pile of dry hemp grass, and slowly lowered its slender and elegant neck. At this moment, Lester realized that the dragon bird had not forgotten him. Sensing the kindness of the dragon bird, Lester hesitated for a moment, but still jumped down, deciding to see the situation first. Anyway, the knife was in his hand. Did you give birth to a baby? Do you need human help? Or are you simply retaliating against me for giving you the middle finger? Or did you suddenly realize that the child is not actually yours? Do you want to complain to me? Vigilantly observing the silver-winged dragon bird that was tilting its head and looking at him, Lester confirmed that the dragon bird was not hostile. He quickly glanced at the haystack and did not find any crying dragon birds or big eggs. This forced him to give up the idea of holding the bird or egg treasure hostage. Woo woo woo. The silver-winged dragon bird greeted Lester with a low throat sound like snoring, and it straightened its hind legs, stood up, and puffed out its huge chest. Woo 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 hoo. A lot of blood was reflected on the dark white gradient of the belly hair, and 2 crossbow arrows were inserted on it. As for the crossbow arrows on the wings, they had been thrown away by the dragon bird itself. I won't pull them out for you. Lester shook his head, as if it understood what Lester meant. The dragon bird made a whining sound, hesitated for a moment, and quickly turned around and stuck its butt out at Lester. You guy, don't you have a crossbow arrow stuck in your butt? He glanced at the dragon bird's cloaker, which was as big as his fist, with disdain. Facing the smell, Lester did not see any foreign objects or arrow tails around the asterisk, and then became a little impatient, pulled out the magic steel short dagger from the side of his leg, and gestured a few times around the asterisk. This knife should be a fight to the death. The man's face was a little gloomy. You shit on my head and my subordinates' heads for no reason, and you attacked me, and you grabbed me, and forced me to watch your asterisk. Do you really think I'm easy to bully? Not feeling the violent impact as imagined, the dragon bird turned around with some dissatisfaction, and made a snoring sound. I don't understand what you mean. Seeing the human shook his head, the silver-winged dragon bird pointed at the haystack that was coiled into the shape of an egg nest with its silver front claws, and then pointed at itself. Lester put down the dagger, and looked at the dragon bird with strange behavior. You want to lay eggs? He didn't want to get any response, but saw the dragon bird nod quickly, with joy in its big eyes, as if it really understood what he was saying. Can you understand Narkson? Lester was stunned. The dragon bird shook its head. Then why are you nodding your head? If you don't understand, just shake your head. Do you understand? The dragon bird widened its eyes and nodded. Feeling that he was being fooled, Lester rolled his eyes and was a little speechless. He began to think about how to solve his dilemma. If I try to kill the silver-winged dragon bird here, I may not be able to leave this steep snow peak safely. Even if I can leave, I don't know when I can return to the territory, and I may get lost. If I don't kill the dragon bird, it won't let me leave, as if it wants me to help do something. What should I do? Chapter 86 Chain Reaction. While Lester was guessing riddles with the Snow Peak Riddle Dragon, after more than half a month, Margaret had led her people to completely occupy the village of Bolam in the south of the shimmering Silver Mountains. Bolam village has been incorporated into the territory of Naxos. According to the standards of the Emerald Territory, all Bolam people belong to the Emerald Territory. In addition to private property, all other property, including land, is uniformly allocated and arranged by the Emerald Territory. Bolam Village only retains the outer logging sites, farms, and livestock farms, and sends special personnel to provide corresponding resources for the Emerald Territory. Most of the Bolam people were forcibly relocated to the Emerald Territory in batches to fill the population, so that the population of the Emerald Territory officially reached more than 700 people. In the future, Bolam Village will be replanned and rebuilt, and an important port village will be established in a suitable location on the southern coast, becoming an important seaport for the inland Emerald Territory. After passing through the endless shimmering silver mountains and the mountain crossing passage discovered by the traitor Natividar, the Bolam people who successfully came to the Emerald Territory were stunned by everything in front of them. There was no human or livestock excrement everywhere, no refugees and beggars who were naked and skinny, and no thugs who would kill innocent people for an egg. The clean and tidy environment, the wide stone roads, the confident people coming and going, the children playing and laughing, and the neat and orderly army. If there were not a few cruel corpses pecked clean by bads hanging on the tall wooden poles, the people of Bolam would think they were dreaming. Everything in front of them was like the beautiful scenery before the Rune War, and the unimaginable living place really existed in front of them. Completely different from the previous barren environment, the Emerald Territory was rich and beautiful, just as its name, like a flawless green emerald. Many people in Bolam simply couldn't believe that this was a human home created by the legendary northern barbarians who only knew how to plunder and kill. The Bolam people who wanted to resist the rule of the Narksan barbarians with their silent actions hesitated, and then tried to start a new life in the warm embrace of the Emerald leaders. Only a few Bolam people who lost their loved ones suppressed the hatred in their hearts, used smiles to deceive the traitors who had completely betrayed the village, and gathered all the strength they could gather in the dark, looking for opportunities for revenge. For most of the suffering Bolam people, all the promises were not as convincing as the bread in their hands and the cotton clothes they wore. Being able to eat and wear warm clothes was enough for most people in this turbulent era. The good days have just begun. In a few years, the Bolam people who live a good life will disappear completely. Everything was settled. Natividad stood on a chair, facing the direction of the Silver Mountains, and slowly closed his eyes. That was the direction of his hometown. Smiling faces appeared in his mind, and the man couldn't help but curl the corners of his lips and put the rope around his neck. Traitors should be punished like traitors. After saying the last words of his life, Natividad kicked the chair over, and the hemp rope hanging high on the beam instantly tightened, hanging the man up. The pride of despising death instantly dissipated, and the god of death swung his black sickle and mercilessly hooked it around the man's neck, tightening it tighter and tighter. He suddenly realized that he was really going to die. The man in midair began to struggle and shake instinctively, in vain and powerless. The rope was tightly tied around his neck, turning the living man into a cold corpse quickly and effectively. Should I find a crowded place to hang myself? The last thought emerged in the man's mind, and this thought quickly dissipated. The wooden door was suddenly pushed open, and the soldier slashed with a sword. The rope broke with a sound, and the purple-faced man fell to the ground in a mess, gasping for breath, and was poked hard on but by the fallen chair leg, like a small red shrimp arching its body. Sheathing the sword, the soldier looked at the man with a face full of fear, and said in a deep voice, "General Margaret has ordered that, in order to atone for his sins to the villagers, Natividar of Bolam has hanged himself." The refugee Navi was rescued by the Black Iron Guard and officially joined the Emerald Territory. His work location is the Quiet Forest. Navi, do you have any objections? Finally calming his breath, Navi raised his head, then gently lowered it. Navi, no objection. Trewil is a village west of Bolam. After the fall of Bolam, the villagers of Trewil fell into great panic. The news that the Narksan barbarians occupied the eastern village of Bolam has spread. Faced with the terrible consequences of the disappearance of the entire village, the residents of Trewil thought of seeking help from Demacia. Several wooden boats carried Trewil's hopes along the southern coast of the Valoran continent and slowly sailed towards the west coast of the Conqueror's Sea. Life is getting harder and harder. For I say the adult's miserable appearance every day cannot solve the substantive problems. It would be more useful for him to go out and herd sheep. At least he could bring back a few well-fed lambs for his mother, while the villagers holding swords were nothing but swaying around with fear on their faces. He probably dropped his swords and fell to the ground the first time he saw the Narxons. Unfortunately, there was no sheep to herd that day. I say, these few days have been uneasy. You should stay at home. There is still some food at home. We won't starve. At worst, we can kill the sheep. It's safer to stay in the village than for you to run around. The woman's worried look made Isaiah feel a little funny, but he also understood that his mother was really worried about him. The shepherd boy held the woman's rough right hand. The filial son comforted his anxious mother in his own way. Mom, those uncles in the village, even though they have weapons in their hands, we can't rely on them at all. If the Narxon barbarians want to kill us, neither of us can escape, and our heads will be chopped off. The woman had some expectations and confidence in the village's defense power, but after hearing what her son said, her face turned pale and her body began to tremble. Really? After realizing that he had said the wrong thing, Isaiah scratched his head and spoke again to comfort her. Don't worry, Mom. If the Narxons come, I will be the first to surrender. At that time, in order to stabilize people's hearts, they will definitely not hurt you as my mother. Fear instantly turned into anger. Pa. How can you be a coward who surrenders? Is that what I taught you? Isaiah covered his swollen face and left the gathering place angrily, with a stubborn look on his face. No matter what you think, I won't let anyone hurt me, even if they are traitors. After leaving the somewhat desolate and deserted village gathering place, Isaiah instinctively walked towards the grazing mountain area. If the chicken is not happy with the sheep, I can go deeper into the ground. Thinking of this, the shepherd boy quickened his pace. Chapter 87 Stinky Yordles and Dragon Lizards. So why are you following me, you cowardly bastard who is afraid of even snow rabbits? Is it because I caught a rabbit for you when you were sticking your butt out? Or is it because I have lived with you, a super coward, for more than a month? On a large white rock halfway up the mountain in the shimmering silver mountains, a strange furry creature was staring at its butt with its only intact dark red eye. To be precise, it was a big-eyed dragon lizard following behind its butt. Gilu Gilu, the dragon lizard with yellow-green scales, opened its big mouth and stuck out its long tongue, making a strange sound to the grumpy furry dwarf. But the dwarf knew that it was an expression of affection. Although I don't know why I can understand your monotonous and ridiculous voice, you'd better not follow me. A timid lizard cannot be the partner of a warrior, even if you are a female lizard. Your stinky asterisk is useless to me. Coming down from the big rock, the dwarf, who felt that he had lost the blessing of his height, sighed and tightened the big axe on his shoulder and pressed his stinky fur hat. Just like when leaving Bandle City, the great warrior will eventually leave this damn mountain, leave the stupid lizards living on the mountain, and embark on his own road of bravery. Goodbye, idiot. Giluhu, the yellow and green dragon lizard, widened its eyes and hid behind the big rock. Its square head stared at the dwarf who was about to leave and made a pitiful sound. After walking a few steps and listening to the whimpering coming from behind, the dwarf seemed to feel that it was too ruthless to leave directly. He suddenly turned his body and waved his small hat at the stupid lizard hiding behind the rock, completely cutting off the last trace of thought, and then ran away. Giluela accepting the invitation of the dwarf, the dragon lizard made a cheerful sound and happily followed the furry dwarf again, making the dwarf's ears stand up in anger. Female lizard. I waved my hat at you to tell you not to follow me, not to follow me. Hulu. The dragon lizard rubbed the dwarf's body in a flattering manner, with bright eyes. You're making me so mad. I don't care about you. Do whatever you want. Hulu, this is the dead end you chose, stupid lizard. If you follow Kled, you will die on the road of the brave sooner or later. You are such a complete idiot, seeking your own death. There is no cure. So stupid that even the air will feel suffocated by you. Hulu. Okay, I know your name is Scarol. Don't emphasize this to me all the time. Damn it, it's really weird. I would give a lizard such a stupid name. I must have been confused by the stupid emphasis of the stupid lizard. Listen, stupid lizard, if you want to follow me, you must be brave. You can't, at least when you see a rabbit. Before Cled finished speaking, the dragon lizard named Scaril jumped up on the spot, ran quickly to the back, and disappeared in a flash. Just, run away. A mountain breeze blew by, and Cled's little hat fell to the ground with a thump sound. The yodel stared blankly at the dragon lizard, that disappeared in the blink of an eye, suddenly widened his eyes and roared. Damn animal. Don't come back. After roaring, Cled picked up his beloved axe and angrily stared at the surprised human not far away. Human, for the sake of scaring that stupid lizard away, leave here quickly, otherwise Uncle Cled will definitely use the axe to split your head. Let you know why the flowers are so red. A special biological visitor? Lee can speak human language? No wonder Wawa is afraid of Lee. The boy with half of his face swollen was not afraid, but walked a little closer. You impolite little thing. Can you speak human language? Even a yodel can speak human language, but you can't. Didn't your mother teach you to speak human language when talking to yodel? Or do you think I'm not a human? Cled bared his fangs and raised the axe in his hand high, but found that the boy in front of him was leaning towards him with more curiosity. It was simply incredible, completely different from the group of humans who screamed and ran away before. The look in this human's eyes, did he really think of himself as a monkey? Since you still have some courage, Uncle Cled will give you a chance to escape. Cled, who was talking to himself and picked up his hat, saw the stupid human cub, who was 2 heads taller than him, put his stupid hands on his on his smart and brave head, rubbing it, and soon attacked his ears. So cute, just a little bit smelly. Your mouth stinks too. What's your name? Shame. There's no doubt about it. It's a naked shame. Shame on Cled. Shame on the great warrior. The biggest shame in the history of the yodel people. Now, it's time to wash away the shame. Stupid human cub. I'll let you know the huge price of offending Cled. Waving his hand to open the boy's right hand, the cursing Cled had just taken off the axe on his shoulder when a sound of shaking the ground came from behind him. Without looking back, he knew it was the stupid sound made by that stupid bastard. Coward and coward. But, Cled grinned. Stupid lizard, you're just in time. Come with me to teach this arrogant human kid a lesson. Before he finished speaking, Cled was picked up by the big mouth of the fear dragon lizard. Cled, with a frozen expression, only had time to grab his big axe and small hat, and was carried by the dragon lizard in the air, and rushed to the mountainside. The yodel people who reacted, kept cursing all the way. Even the most violent thunderbolts are not as shocking as the fierce words of the yodel people. Isaiah looked at the farce in front of him, and was stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter, and laughed so hard, that tears flowed out. What a funny guy. The strange visitor on the mountain was cuter than the villagers, and his words were more pleasant, much better than at home following the footsteps of the dragon lizard. Isaiah thought about it, and decided to chase it. He always felt that, as long as he grasped the rhythm of the conversation, he would not be killed by the irritable furry dwarf with an axe. It took Scare less than 3 minutes to bring him back to the Silver Mountains. The angry Cled raised his little hand and hit the dragon lizard's stupid head hard, but the dragon lizard did not show any pain. Instead, it purred comfortably and licked its face with its tongue. Female lizard, you are quite good at running away, right? You are still so stubborn. Gilahoo, okay, I know you don't understand what I'm saying. I'm a fool for talking to a fool. I'm also a fool, but compared to you, I'm still not as stupid as you. Don't try to refute me, because the rebuttal of a fool is meaningless. After reorganizing his luggage and patting his fur skirt, Crep picked up his axe and walked back the way he came. Hello. Scare suddenly rushed to Crez's side, and then a strong pungent smell of gas hit his face, making people feel so painful that they wanted to vomit. Cre was stunned, and the next moment he was furious. He took a deep breath, rolled his eyes, and pointed at Scare with a trembling finger. You bastard who doesn't care about others' fat farts. Can you point your stupid ass at your enemies? Oh my god, I have never suffered such an injustice in Bandle City. I was actually attacked by a stupid lizard with biological weapons. Oh my god, I bet that, if you point your ass at your distant cousins, the dragon birds, they can knock down those flat-haired beasts. Oh, it stinks. I'm going to vomit my overpass meal. Gurgle ha. Woo woo, I'm not praising you. Why did I meet such a stupid and cowardly creature like you? Except for a stinky big fart. You are really good for nothing. Good for nothing. I really regret wanting to make you my mount. I, Kled, was so blind. I shouldn't have given you that rabbit in the first place. Thanks to Zing's House AZ, Book Friends 201906161232201228. Don't want to go to work Mr. Tanako. I love to eat Lolita Rain. Flower, Fog, Don't Make Trouble See, It's Your Dream, Lao Ziting, Xiao Yang, Book Friends 202102170244070014. Left Bank Rain, AI, Pigeon for Ice, Salted Fish Seafood King, Sendak, for the monthly tickets of several book friends. Thank you for your recommendation votes. Chapter 88 Isaiah and his Yodel friends. Mr. Clare, I'm sorry to meet you in this way. Isaiah, who came out from the side, witnessed everything. He took a deep breath and smelled the stench while cursing at the big lizard. The plush creature in front of him was really strange. Sharing stench, is this a way to express closeness? Speaking of which, when my father was still alive, my mother seemed to like to fart for me, and my father to smell. It's that human. Huluola. Seeing that the dragon lizard scare was about to jump up and run away with him in his mouth, Kled did not hold back this time. He endured the severe pain caused by the recoil and slapped the dragon lizard's scaly chin, and then kicked it again. Feeling Kled's caress, the nervous scare finally calmed down and realized that the terrible two-legged creature in front of him was not dangerous. My name is Claire, not Claire, stupid human. I didn't expect you to come to my door yourself. Claire, holding up the axe and shaking his right hand, approached Isaiah, looking a little funny. I have no hostility, Mr. Kled. I just want to make friends with you. Isaiah was not afraid of the dwarf who pretended to be ferocious. He felt that he could have another friend, a friend who was suspected to be from the legendary city that was circulated in the village. According to the legend, these dwarfs are the most naughty elves in mythology. They are kind messengers sent to the earth by the gods. They are kind-hearted, like to play pranks, and most importantly, they are interesting. They are much more interesting than those old men. Isaiah did not think that he needed to be afraid of magical elf, even if this elf was blind in one eye, had a mouth full of terrible fangs, a ferocious axe, and a timid lizard that loved to fart. He had always been looking forward to this day, looking forward to meeting a legendary magical creature. Although the one in front of him was indeed a bit smelly. 14 years old, a shepherd boy in a mountain village, he wanted to make friends with the beast elder. After looking at Isaiah again, Kled put down the axe. He could not muster the interest to fight a guy who had no hostility. Human, Kled doesn't need friends. What Kled needs is a powerful enemy and the hot blood of the enemy, not the meaningless kindness of a young boy. Kled sat down on the ground while saying these terrifying words. After being tormented by Skarl for a long time, even the energy of the Yodel was a little overwhelmed, and his two short legs were trembling. Of course, it might also be because of the smell of farts that made him run to his head. But at least you are much stronger than this female lizard who can only fart and run away, so I won't attack you for the time being. As expected, he received the kindness of the magical creature. Isaiah walked slowly to a meter away from the Yodel and sat down gently. He didn't know whether he didn't move closer because he was afraid of the big axe or the strong lingering stench. It should be the latter. Mr. Kled, are you from the legendary magical city, Yodel City? Kled rolled his eyes and said lightly, it's Bandle City. Bandle City is inhabited by Yodels. Yodels built Bandle City. Bandle City is Bandle City of Yodels. Yodels are Yodels of Bandle City. Yodels love Yodels living in Bandle City, but Bandle City constrains Yodels living in Bandle City. Listening to the tongue twisters that were repeated over and over again, Isaiah's eyes began to turn in circles. Human boy, compared to Kled, you are still young. Kled proudly took off the small hat on his head, put it on his legs, and exhaled a breath of turbid air. The dragon lizard's gear also completely relaxed, lying on the ground to take a nap, no longer considering Isaiah as a high threat target. Okay, Mr. Kled, a Bandle from Yodel City. After organizing his words, Isaiah spoke with some curiosity. When did you come to Yangyang Mountain from Yodel City? Is Yodel City built in a hidden corner of this mountain? Do you have other Banda friends? Why do you, a human, have so many questions. What the hell is Yangyang Mountain? Isn't it Zuxu Mountain? Kled asked impatiently. I ask you, who is the strongest? The bravest? The most warlike in the human kingdom under the mountain? To be honest, I came out of Yodel City this time just to fight. Do you mean who is the strongest? The boy thought of the Narxans who had just occupied the village of Borum in the east. If even the Narxans who were about to attack the village entrance were not strong, then who could be called strong? Probably the Narxans are the strongest. They just occupied the village of Borum in the east. I'm afraid it will be our village's turn soon. One by one, none of the old guys in our village can escape. Kled's eyes lit up, and his voice was a little excited. So, the Narxans you mentioned will bring powerful warriors to attack your village? After hesitating for a moment, the boy nodded. It should be correct. Since the neighboring villages have been occupied, there is no reason for the Narxans to let our village go. Great. Kled stood up and raised his axe. I want to see if the Narxans you mentioned are as powerful as you said. Hurrah. Scare, who had been half opening his eyes, suddenly jumped up and cheered with Kled. Stupid lizard. What are you happy about? You will run away without a trace when the time comes. Kled gently kicked the dragon lizard's belly, thought about it, and turned to the boy and said, you can ask me to answer your question, but you must help me get something back. What is it? I was also a little curious about what the Bandle man in front of him wanted him to get. Help me get a set of saddles. Patting the female lizard on the back, Kled grinned and seemed a little embarrassed. Unfortunately, I only saw the bloody mouth with ferocious teeth, but fortunately he was used to it. This female lizard can't be driven away, so I have to take her with me. The great Kled doesn't need useless companions, so I can only let the female lizard become Kled's mount. So a suitable lizard saddle has become the most needed thing at the moment. Kled pointed at Scare, who stood up confused and didn't know what to do, and smiled. Human, if you can make a saddle for Scare that is suitable for me, then you will truly gain the friendship of General Kled. After figuring out what Kled wanted, Isaiah nodded and said to Kled, can I touch Scare? I need to observe the shape of the dragon lizard. When we return to the village, I will ask the village Lethawika to try to make a saddle for you. Okay. Kled nodded, turned around and hugged Scare's big head, blocking the dragon lizard's sight with his small body. Touch it quickly, don't hesitate, I'm here, Scare won't hurt you. Okay, Mr. Kled. Carefully jumping behind the dragon lizard, Isaiah placed his hands on Scare's hard and beautiful yellow-brown scales, feeling the beautiful curves and body shape of the female lizard, and slowly moved his hands downwards, and soon felt some strange protrusions. Scare, is she a female? Gurgle gurgle woo. Scare rarely made a strange sound, and Kled was a little confused, but still answered. That's right, this stupid lizard is a coward. Wait, when did you, stupid lizard, call yourself such a coward? No, I should say you are such a coward. Isn't it just being touched? Look at you shaking so much, you're almost like the little bees in Bandle City. Sigh, you're just a lizard that's afraid of rabbits. I don't know what role you can play on the battlefield. I told the editor that the title of the book can be changed. Here is a call for new titles. Everyone can actively participate. The requirements are that it can be highly consistent with League of Legends, to facilitate search and query, and reflect the chronicle of Runeterra spanning thousands of years. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89, A Love Story in the Sad Wind. Darkness fell, and the sky was full of stars. On a high snowy peak in the north of the Urus Mountains near Freljord, a lonely soul sat at the entrance of a cave facing the cold wind, looking at the beautiful night sky of Runeland, with a somewhat desolate look. The owner of this soul was none other than the handsome Lester, the lord of the Emerald Territory. He was likely to be sad for a while, because of the oncoming cold wind. Before that, in response to the goodwill expressed by the dragon bird, Lester had already pulled out the crossbow arrow that was inserted into the belly of the silver-winged dragon bird. Finally, under the repeated directional movements of the dragon bird, the man figured out why this big guy who had shit on his head wanted to attack him. Woo woo woo. Tired sure enough, seeing the man looking at him, the beautiful big guy turned around again, raised his butt, and aimed at the man. Lester turned his head away, looking sad. Obviously, this beautiful big guy with a wingspan of more than 8 meters had a serious misunderstanding of the middle finger he extended, and regarded him as a favorite mating partner. But, I'm a human being, why would a big bird consider a human being as a matchmaking partner? Isn't this beyond the scope? It has fundamentally deviated from the issue of XP. The so-called normal pleasure should at least be to find a creature of the same species, right? What went wrong? Why would a female silver-winged dragon bat be obsessed with me? The situation in front of him was too far away from the original. Lester, who claimed to have experienced many ups and downs, couldn't help but want to smoke a cigarette that he had never smoked before, and sighed with melancholy. Woo 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 woo. Seeing that the human was still indifferent, the silver-winged dragon bat turned back with grievance, carefully leaned towards the man, stretched out its elegant and beautiful neck, as if it wanted to rub against the human, but was a little worried that it would be disliked, and looked humble. Back off. Hearing the man's ruthless rebuke, the silver-winged dragon bat widened its eyes with grievance, lowered its body, and stepped back 2 steps awkwardly, looking at a loss, lowering its head and whining non-stop, as if crying and complaining. Being a little upset by the dragon bird that looked like a big girl, the man stood up, walked out for a dozen steps, looked down, and sighed. The flat land outside the cave was only a dozen square meters in size, and there was no road to speak of further down. It could be said that it was a road that God wanted to kill people. Below the 10,000 feet snow peak was a bottomless abyss. The mountain road in front of him was beyond his ability. Even if he trained his body with a cultivation posture every day, he was not absolutely sure that he could walk down this towering and steep snow peak with his physical body alone, and then pass through the endless unmanned restricted area and return to the Emerald Territory in the south. In other words, if he did not rely on the silver-winged dragon bird, he would definitely die here. This was because he had studied ice element magic and gained a certain resistance to cold. Otherwise, he would freeze to death here. He raised a middle finger and actually brought himself to a dead end. Lester smiled bitterly and sat on the edge of the snow peak. If it was because of his appearance that attracted the attention of the dragon bird, it seemed that he should make a mask for himself when he returned this time. If it was due to other factors, he had to find a way to solve it. Woo 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 woo. Seeing that the human had not returned for a long time, the dragon bat walked out of the cave quickly on its hind legs like a landlubber. After seeing the man under the night sky, the silver-winged dragon bat just felt relieved and realized that the position where the man was sitting was actually very dangerous. Okay, I know, I'm just a little overwhelmed. Lester sighed, a little annoyed by the dragon bird's humming, stood up, and walked towards the silver-winged dragon bird. Eyeing. Yes. Hearing the man speaking softly to him again, the dragon bat vibrated its wings with joy and lowered its proud and beautiful neck to the man. Looking at the overly humble bird in front of him, Lester took a deep breath and put his hand on the dragon bird's chin and touched it. I can see that you are different from other ordinary dragon birds. You are the best in your group, a princess, or even a queen, as powerful, noble and beautiful. You should be pursued, not pursue others, especially me. I'm a human, and you are a dragon bird. We should not do things that cross races, unless you become a human, or a human form, then there is still a possibility of in-depth communication. The silver-winged dragon bird rarely felt the kindness from humans. Although it did not understand Nargson, it wagged its tail happily, looking a little silly. Lester took everything in his eyes and sighed. If it was not for true love, who would become so humble? Is it really because of her body? But there are so many excellent male dragon birds. Why do you have a crush on me? Realizing that except for a few unlucky horses, the dragon birds did not really hurt his subordinates, Lester gave up the idea of hurting the dragon birds. After all, they were not hostile, but just courting, although the method was a bit too rough. But then again, if I can think positively, if I can handle this big guy, I may have an extra flying mount in the future. So how to handle it has become a problem that needs to be considered now. If I'm not careful, I will be taken to the sky by the nuclear bomb, and I don't have wings. When the time comes, I will fall from a height of 10,000 feet. TSK. Meredith used magic to convey the news to Margaret before the convoy returned to the Emerald Territory. Margaret, who received the news of Lester's disappearance, was silent for a long time, and then quickly made arrangements. 10 miles away from the Emerald Territory, the reliable warriors handpicked by Margaret directly surrounded the convoy. The soldiers who had been prepared rushed forward and quickly disarmed more than 20 guards. With proper etiquette and attitude, they escorted the guards to a temporary detention area that had been prepared, and temporarily detained them in a way that they would not have to worry about food and drink. Knowing that this was to block the news, the imprisoned soldiers and guards also expressed their understanding and did not resist at all, but fell into deep self-blame. After all, it was the fault of the guards. The news that Lester was attacked and disappeared by a dragon bird must be perfectly blocked, otherwise the Emerald Territory, which was established not long ago, may collapse in an instant and lose all its good order. After solving the problem of the leak of the soldiers in the convoy, the two little girls who cried all the way and had swollen eyes became the next problem to be solved. For this reason, Meredith and Margaret discussed it and decided to secretly raise the little girl in the Lord's mansion for protection and announced to the outside world that the convoy had not returned because it was stranded in the Immortal Fortress. This book will be on the shelves in early January, and the name will be changed to The Millennium Warlord Starts from the League of Legends. Do you have any opinions? Then, there will be a monthly ticket activity from 0 hours on December 29th to 2400 hours on December 31st. Starting the day after tomorrow, one vote will be worth 2 votes. If you still have votes in your hands, please throw them over quickly so that I can put it on the shelves and update more. Muah. Chapter 90 The Dragon Tamer of Valoran. Emerald Territory, Lord's Mansion. Jis and Tally were given 2 long vacations by their teacher and also received new tasks. After being influenced by magic, Tally in a grey robe has a more intellectual beauty. At this moment, the barbarian elder sister is talking to the 2 sad little guys, and the barbarian younger sister is cooking food in front of the stove. In the absence of Lester, the 2 sisters are half masters. Believe me, your brother Lester will be fine. You just need to wait here obediently, and you can see brother Lester come back as soon as possible. But, Zinna sobbed softly for a few times and said with a droopy face, but big brother Lester was caught by a big bird. After crying many times, Miss Han no longer cried, but became a little quiet, lowering her head and not knowing what she was thinking. Zinna, think about it. If your brother Lester didn't expect that he would be captured by the big bird, why would he arrange for Sister Meredith to send you back safely in advance? Since brother Lester had already anticipated that he would be captured by the big bird, with his ability, how could he abandon you and get into trouble? After understanding the logic in Tally's words, Zinna's eyes lit up and her voice became brighter. Sister Tally, are you saying that brother Lester knew in advance that he would be captured by the big bird, and he also had the ability to deal with the big bird, so he asked Sister Meredith to send us back first? Tally gently touched Zinna's little head and nodded with a smile. Yes, that's what happened. She exhaled gently, as if she had completely let go of the burden in her heart, and there was a little more smile on her face. As expected, brother Lester is the most powerful. She raised her head, looking at her sister with a smile like a flower. Miss Ha stood up with a wooden face and walked upstairs. Sister? Why is my sister still unhappy? Brother Lester is fine. Looking at the back of the little blonde girl, Tally sighed. Maybe your sister has suppressed her joy in her heart. Closing the door of the room and locking it, Miss Ha's face instantly collapsed. She bit her teeth tightly, pulled her twitching lips, and wiped the tears that could not be stopped with her hands. Miss Ha bit her teeth and held her breath just to ensure that she did not make any sound, and it was not about heartbreak. She was different from her sister, who liked to win sympathy. Her pain did not need to be seen by anyone, and she did not need anyone's pity, except for the man who was already dead. Crying silently, Miss Ha lay on the pillow, buried her face in it, and began to twitch and sob. He hasn't been back for 7 days. He even imprisoned us here, to keep it a secret. Obviously, he died to save us. Why can you still laugh? Obviously Brother Lester loved you the most. Why can you still laugh so happily after Brother Lester died? So heartless that you even believed such a false lie. He gave you the pink berries first, the puppet gift first, picked on you, fed you delicious food, coaxed you when you acted like a spoiled child, and gave you priority in everything you wanted. Why are you so heartless? I like Brother Lester too, I just don't want to say it out loud. Why is he so good to you? A heartless guy. The little blonde girl sat up until the cotton pillow was wet with tears, took out a towel from her pocket, wiped her nose and tears, and made herself feel better. Sister, come down to eat. The energetic voice of her sister came from downstairs again. Miss Ha frowned, and for the first time she felt disgusted with her sister's cute voice. Taking a deep breath, Miss Ha said coldly, "Got it, I'll be right down." After opening the door, the blonde girl went straight into the bathroom. When she came out, she was calm again. HMM 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 HMM. HMM 2 minutes later, the silver-winged dragon bird, whose body was completely relaxed, squinted its eyes comfortably. After confirming that it would not crush the man, it lay down in the nest, built of hemp grass, and began to take a nap. Its slender and beautiful tail swayed, and it was obvious that it was in a good mood. 3 minutes and 12 seconds, much slower than yesterday's 1 minute and 30 seconds. After washing his hands covered with egg white, Lester found that treating the dragon bad was actually no different from dealing with a female cat in heat. If he was willing to do it, the dragon bad was still easy to deal with. It was not as he imagined, that he had to use formal methods to satisfy it. This gave him the possibility of taming the dragon bird. When he arrived at the entrance of the cave, the man pulled out the magic steel dagger and cut off a small piece of snow antelope meat. After purifying it with ice element, he put it directly into his mouth with blood and ice residue. In his previous life, he had even eaten raw cockroaches or centipedes when he was avoiding searches. Eating raw meat was really no big deal. Without saltpeter, it was difficult to condense the thin fire element. In the absence of fire conditions, eating raw meat with blood became the only option. At least compared to cockroaches, clean snow antelope meat became a rare delicacy. The snow antelope was the food that the silver-winged dragon bad named Silver Moon by Lester deliberately caught for men. In Lester's opinion, this huge silver-winged dragon bad seemed to want to support him. Speaking of it, let's not talk about the previous life, whether it is Rose or Silver Moon now. This seems to have become a customary quirk. Every big guy who likes him, whether it is age or size, seems to want to take him as a forbidden delicacy, as long as he has some advantages. He wants to lock him up every day, to make him a big fat man, and then squeeze him dry. But the problem is that he is not Snow White, and being supported by a silver-winged dragon bird is a bit too outrageous. In the previous life of the East Country online literature, which novel dared to write like this? I'm afraid it would be sprayed to death by readers. Shaking his head, he threw away the messy ideas used to relieve boredom. This time when I go back, I will ask Uncle Blacksmith Crystal to make a suitable mask for me. After making the decision, Lester quickly finished his lunch and thought about how to let Yunyu know in the afternoon that he was no longer the object of her wanton oppression. In the relationship between men and women, whether it is emotion or desire, the addicted are always controlled. Obviously, in the relationship and status between him and Yunyu is already in an absolute disadvantage. The difficulty now is not how to threaten this huge silver-winged dragon bad with despicable and helpless means, but how to make Yunyu understand that he wants to ride her back to the Emerald Territory. After overcoming the racial problem, the next thing to overcome is the language problem, which is a difficulty that cannot be solved by the courage of humans alone. Yunyu wants to ride him. Why don't I want to ride Yunyu? Speaking of it, most of the time, interpersonal communication is just a relationship of riding and being ridden, but with more attributes of active and passive, willing or unwilling. Hialu hialu woo woo woo. Hearing the comfortable snoring of Yunyu, Lester pulled Yunyu's fur and scales onto the big bird's back. After thinking for a while, Lester climbed onto Yunyu's neck, looking for the most suitable foothold. Woo woo Hialu noticing the man on her neck, her vigilance disappeared, and Yunyu snored and closed her eyes again. For the first time, a clear idea appeared in the big guy's mind. This kind of life is really good. Please forgive me for my poor naming. This Shuang Shang is just lame. after referring to everyone's opinions. In order to avoid more ambiguity of Infinite Flow, I decided to change it to League of Legends, Millennium Warlord. Thank you all for your enthusiastic suggestions, and then call on everyone to isolate the book friend. I become stronger all by talent, who suggested changing the title to Lalita Angel Sister Development Plan Crossing. This name is getting more and more suspicious. Remember to bring me prison food. Finally, thank you to Yunfeng Wenjin, Blood Moon 1, Dahan, ZZ_, Yalxingshan, Book Friend 20210602045727230. Dawn Daoiao, Peverall Book Friend Mail Lane, and I Climb by Myself, for their monthly ticket support. Chapter 91 The Smoke of Peace. Silver Moon, Silver Moon. Silver-winged dragon Bad tilted its head and looked at its mate curiously, pointing at it. At the same time, it was also wondering why it hadn't laid eggs after so many times. Your name is Silver Moon, understand? After a long time and countless repetitions, Silver-winged dragon Bad barely understood that the strange syllables in the mate's mouth were calling itself, and it couldn't help but feel happy. Lay eggs next time. Yes then, Lester looked at Silver Moon, who had initiated a communication request again, turning around very skillfully and sticking up its bird's butt towards itself. Fortunately, after Lester's deliberate maintenance and cleaning, the asterisk was much cleaner. In addition, the dragon bird loved to be clean, and there was no peculiar smell on its body. After all, Silver Moon itself was not an ordinary dragon bird. Turning around silently and leaving directly, Lester immediately put on a face. Just like teaching a child, if you can't let him understand that he has done something wrong, and can't let him understand the serious consequences of his mistakes, then he will never take you seriously, even if you are his father or mother who gave birth to him and raised him. After waiting for a long time without any movement, Yenyu turned around and saw Lester leaving the cave. Hulu, woo Yenyu felt a little wronged and followed out of the cave on her hind legs. After noticing that her spouse's mood had returned to the indifference at the beginning, the dragon bird lowered its head in a humming sound, as if it had done something wrong. It is not possible to blindly use cold violence. Seeing that Yenyu had given in, Lester's expression also eased a lot. He touched Yenyu's soft chin, and when Yenyu squinted her eyes, he began to pull Yenyu's fur and climb onto Yenyu's neck. During the climb, Yenyu was afraid that her spouse would be angry, so she dared not move at all. Although she didn't know what her spouse wanted to do, could it be that he wanted to lay eggs in the air? At a position about 1/3 of the distance from Yenyu's head, the most slender and long scales, and there were also scales suitable for fixing the body position, Lester directly lay on it and held the raised scales tightly. Sensing the movement on her neck, Silver Moon carefully turned her head and looked with wide eyes, but she couldn't see her spouse sitting not far behind her head. She couldn't help but get a little anxious and started to move around randomly. Silver Moon, I'm here, don't be afraid. Hearing the familiar voice, Silver-winged dragon bird's fear and anxiety were much less, and the amplitude of its movement slowed down, and it turned its head back. Then, Lester was also in trouble. He rode up successfully, but what should he do next? He couldn't just say to the beast in human language, fly quickly, fly to Emerald Territory, just south of this mountain, and Silver Moon would understand. Lester didn't understand how to make the big bird under his but fly according to his instructions, and Silver Moon didn't dare to move at will, for fear of making her spouse angry again. In this way, the man and the beast were in a stalemate, and outside the cave, there was only the howling of the cold wind. On the ice field of Freljord, the brutal fighting for survival and scarce supplies never stopped. Arsalan understood this, but he did not understand why he was expelled from the tribe by the War Mother, just because he wanted to marry the War Mother like other wives and end this secret relationship. The War Mother had already married 4 wives, so why couldn't she accept him? With a belly full of grievances, the man with long braids was coldly abandoned by the tribe and walked into the cold wasteland alone. The orders of the War Mother must never be disobeyed. This is the tradition of the Freljord tribe for thousands of years, and it is also the real reason why the Freljord has not been defeated by this barren ice field. At least he thought so and obeyed so much. However, it was not until he stood alone in the cold wind that Arslan understood what this meant. From top to bottom, there was only a rotten wooden stick that was about to break to accompany him for a while. Fortunately, the War Mother remembered the old relationship and did not take off his fur coat, letting him walk away with the bird. Looking at the rotten stick in his hand, Arslan sighed. Perhaps he would not need to encounter hungry and ferocious beasts before the stick in his hand would be completely broken. The man walked for an unknown period of time in hunger and cold. He thought he would die on the cruel and cold ice field, but Arslan was lucky to meet a wandering group led by men, a group of male exiles from the tribe. Because there was no Iceborne led by the War Mother as the backbone to resist the fierce bear people and groups of snow wolves and powerful trolls, Arslan had to follow this group of more than 80 men all the way south. 5 years later, by robbing small settlements along the way, they arrived at the northwest of the Urus Mountains. Some people say that, as long as you cross the steep mountains, you can reach the rich south. The leader said that the south flowing with milk and honey will eventually become the hunting ground of northern hunters. Everyone believed it, and the wanderers successfully climbed the mountains and stood on the top of the mountain, looking at the green land on the other side of the mountain. Under the call of the leader of the wandering group, the exiles from Freljord showed a grim smile to the south side of the mountain. Not far away, the quiet southern village at the foot of the mountain was burning with wisps of smoke, still unaware of the hungry wolf-like sight. A large settlement in Demacia. After years of careful construction, the original village gathering place is a little different from before. The white forbidden magic stones are neatly arranged on the periphery, forming a rough outline. There are also many tall white marble buildings in the village with wood as the main building material. The core part of it is occupied by the most powerful ethnic groups and people in power in Demacia, attracting many envious eyes every day, and it has become the high standard of life pursued by the residents of Demacia. In the northern mountainous area of Demacia, on the hillside of the Urus Mountains, there is a simple training camp specially built for the Demacia Steel Swordsman Corps. There are wooden sword stakes and weapon training grounds in the training camp, which are specially designed for the elite soldiers of the Demacia Steel Swordsman Corps. One day, Kraken, sweating profusely, was hitting the wooden sword post with a wooden sword on the training ground when he heard hurried footsteps behind him. Master Swordsman Kraken. After putting away his heavy broad wooden sword, Kraken straightened his body and looked at the Demacia messenger in front of him with a serious expression. What happened? The messenger with 3 white feathers on his head took a few deep breaths, saluted the swordsman of the Steel Swordsman Corps in front of him with the Demacia military salute, and said in a hurry, Lord Jarvan has ordered that the Steel Swordsman Corps quickly assemble and attack, and must repel the Freljord bandits attacking from the north, and assist the village of Homes. Kraken nodded, his face solemn, called his deputy, and blew the assembly whistle. 16 fully armed elite warriors quickly assembled. Kraken's 1st Steel Swordsman Squadron and the 2nd Steel Swordsman Squadron led by Neltis were divided into 4 groups. They rode 4 carriages specially used to carry Steel Swordsman infantry and quickly went down the mountain and drove quickly to the northwest. At the same time, in the village of Homes, where flames were blazing, a large number of Demacia villagers were brutally killed. Legion Ranger Knight Sventa was facing the flying stone ziplines and launching a desperate charge with his companions to delay the invasion of the bandits. Cruel wars always come unexpectedly. The charisma of the protagonist will be explained in C149. Please be patient. The driving part will be appropriately reduced in the following plot. Please remember that Hangai never drives for the sake of driving. The reason for driving is because he needs to reach the other side of the world. Nonsense. Chapter 92 Warriors and Cowards. Scatter. 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 Don't let the lasso catch you. Kill. Go to hell. Didn't you eat, you little brat from the south? The roar of the captain of the Rangers of the 1st Legion was in his ears, and in front of him were the bloodthirsty and ferocious Freljord bandits. In the distance, there were the painful wails of the Demacians, and the ground was covered with mutilated corpses. Facing the purgatory-like scene, Sventa had never thought that a broken rope with stones tied at both ends would become such a terrible weapon. The horse legs and soldiers tied by the flying rope would instantly lose the ability to resist, or be hit in the head by the spinning flying stones, falling off the horse on the spot, and hitting their heads with blood. The knight who fainted on the spot would have his head hammered into a rotten watermelon by the barbarian with a hard wooden mallet in the next moment, and then the sharp sword in his hand would be taken away and turned to chop his own people. Obviously, those barbarian bandits didn't even have a few decent swords in their hands, but they easily killed more than a dozen colleagues with simple spinning stone flying ropes and crude wooden sticks. Svente was a little more afraid of these frail-jawed bandits who were strong and had strong body odor. The thought in his mind was just a flash. Svente, who didn't want to die here easily, recalled the riding and slashing skills he learned from the old rider in the barracks. He tightened his right arm, lowered his body, and prepared to drink blood with his fine iron sword. Unfortunately, the script did not develop as in military training. Just like the barbarian warriors more than 10 meters away would not foolishly wait for him to swing his sword like a wooden man. You little Dalmatia brat. You weren't even born when I was sleeping with your grandmother's war mother. Seeing a short rider rushing towards him, Althus smiled, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth with missing front teeth, swung his right arm, shook his wrist, and the animal leg bone stick in his right hand spun and flew towards the horse's head. With a whine, the horse's head, which was unable to dodge, was perfectly hit by the rotating bone stick, which directly smashed a blood pit on the horse's bones, and the horse died tragically on the spot. Svente was thrown off the horse's back by the overturned horse. The new cavalryman turned over several times on the ground according to the inertia of his body. Although he was dizzy and dazed, he was not injured, because his landing action was too standard. His meticulous principle of training successfully saved his life at this moment. From beginning to end, he held the fine iron longsword tightly in his hand, and did not throw it away like other people who fell off the horse. Your good treasure is mine, hey. Ursuls took 2 steps forward, wielding a big wooden stick like a mallet in both hands, and smashing the soldier's leather helmet with a big laugh, just like smashing a watermelon. Very satisfying. As long as he hammered the Dalmatia rider to death, he could throw away the big mallet in his hand and get the exquisite iron weapon. With a roll, he narrowly avoided the hammer that made a small hole in the ground. Svente gritted his teeth and stood up from the ground, swinging the first sword at the barbarian in front of him. Your strength is like your courage. It is vulnerable. Ursuls easily blocked the light sword. He swore that if the Dalmatia soldier in front of him met those invulnerable bears who believed in the bear god on the ice field, he would probably not survive for more than 2 breaths before being disemboweled by those bears with shaman power, and his internal organs were dug out and offered to their bear god. Unlike Narkson, pure Friljordian and Dalmatia are very different. At least in Svente's opinion, he couldn't understand what the barbarian who kept talking in front of him was saying. But he knew it was not a good thing. What good farts can the northern barbarian say except spewing fesses? You bastard who can't even speak human language. Svente, unwilling to be outdone, cursed. He felt that he was no match for the barbarian in front of him, and the soldiers quickly retreated. Haha. Dalmatia cowered. Following Svente, Althus took out the small hand axe hidden under the leather skirt at his waist, and a cruel expression appeared on his face. What he liked most was to face his enemy with his back. This was his most proud and the enemy's most deadly killer. My flying axe can accurately kill all enemies within 10 meters. This is the skill I rely on for survival. You will be the next enemy to die under my flying axe. Letting the coward knight of Dalmatia ride on another horse that had lost its owner, Althus calmed down and began to shake his arms slightly to adjust the direction of the throw. Barbarian, die. Another cavalryman was about to chop from behind Althus, but was hit by the barbarian who suddenly turned his body and threw a flying axe. His head was directly split in half, and a ball of filth burst out and fell to the ground with a thud. Woo woo. Without the restraint of its owner, the horse flexibly avoided the barbarian who was about to hit it, and began to flee from the battlefield in another direction. Obviously, it was not a qualified war horse. Witnessing his companion who died in his place, Svente, who was riding on the horse, broke out in a cold sweat. Seeing that his people were in a state of collapse, Svente retreated, but the wailing of the villagers around his ears made him hesitate to make up his mind. Boy, you are really lucky to be alive until now. Looking around, seeing that more than 50 cavalrymen had completely collapsed, Ursuls was relieved. He slowly took out the blood axe from his rotten skull, smacked his lips, and picked up the iron sword of the dead knight. staring at the shining iron sword. Yuzels was a little dazed. On the reflective blade, he saw his son who died in the hands of the bear man. The bear man tore the young body apart like tearing yak slices, twisted his son's head off, and threw it at his feet. If our tribe had such good things, who would be afraid of the beasts in the wilderness? How could so many people die every day? Damn it. Everyone. Retreat. Retreat. The village of Holmes has now become a bloody hell. The cavalry captain gritted his teeth, and no longer cared about the villagers who had not evacuated, and issued a new order. He couldn't watch all his men die here, and he couldn't escape alone. This was a huge stain. This time, more than 80 riders came to support, and more than 20 were responsible for rescuing the villagers and stopping the massacre. Unexpectedly, the remaining 60-odd people not only failed to repel the bandits, but also failed to stop them. They were easily defeated on the battlefield by the barbarians, who did not even have decent weapons. This made him doubt the significance of the cavalry formed by General Oren. As for the more than 20 riders who went to rescue the villagers, they were also quickly defeated by the sudden fatal blow. Faced with a simple and deadly spinning stone flying rope, the knights could not think of any solution. It was meaningless to simply use the lives of the soldiers to slow down the speed of the barbarians' massacre of the villagers. Everyone would die here. No retreat. No retreat. There are still villagers stranded in the village. No retreat. It was not until the moment when his cavalry captain issued the order that Svente realized what it meant for him and others to evacuate. More than 300 people in Holmes village would all become abandoned and become the target of the northern barbarians. Chapter 93 One Man's Charge. We can't retreat, everyone. There are still people from Demacia here. Many riders present looked at their screaming colleagues hesitantly, then turned their horses around and followed the captain's pace. Svente stared blankly at his companions running away, feeling that his identity as a ranger, which he had always been proud of, was simply a joke. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Look at how confused he is. I think we should go back and gather more people and simply go south to occupy the weak country of Demacia. Ha 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 ha. The frail-jawed bandits who were watching the show laughed and watched the Demacia coward flee the battlefield, and finally they all focused their sarcasm on the young rider, who was screaming miserably, wondering if this fool who didn't know how to run away would wet his pants the next moment. Everything in front of him was a little blurry, and Svente seemed to have returned to the past. Outside the Green Fang Peak outpost, General Oren, with a serious face, was staring at him. Svente, I have a very dangerous mission for you. Ride your plains horse and go to the Narkson camp. Tell them that I, Oren, want to talk to their highest commander. Do you dare to take this mission? That was General Oren's message to me, and that was my answer to General Oren. General, I'm a sentinel, and more importantly, a soldier. Demacia soldiers are never afraid of danger. In fact, at that time, I had a curse word that I didn't say to General Oren. If you are afraid of death, what kind of soldier am I? After shouting out the words that were not said at that time, Svente gently stroked the uneasy horse, his chest pounding, but finally calmed down. After calming down, amid the wailing of villagers and colleagues, the sound of retreating horses, and the vulgar and obscene laughter of barbarians, a blazing fire burned the whole world. The knight raised his silver shining iron sword high up, and the raging fire ignited the rage burning in his heart. Svente glanced at the dozens of bloody barbarian warriors present with hatred. Amid the corpses, scattered all over the ground, the fear and entanglement on the knight's face disappeared, and his will had never been so firm. He could not control what others did, he would only do what a ranger knight should do. Demacia. Svente, the ranger warrior of the 1st Legion, is here. The knight's voice was firm and loud, piercing through the clouds, as if chanting a triumphant war song. Not far away, the knight who had not yet completely left stiffened his body, unconsciously stopped holding the horse's belly, tightened the reins, turned his head with a complicated expression, and looked at the fool behind him who was still holding the position. They haven't left yet, they haven't left yet. Eri, we are saved. The desperate Demacia villagers hiding in the dark were waiting for slaughter, but suddenly they heard the loud voices of the Demacia soldiers outside the house. The villagers retreated in fear, hugged their sons, and cried as if they had found support. After the Damashionite roared the first sentence, the sarcasm and ridicule on the faces of the frail-jawed barbarians gradually solidified, and their faces began to become solemn. This was an expression they had never shown when they encountered the cavalry charge. Although they didn't understand what the Damashia man was saying, even a fool could see that the knight was not going to run away. He would not surrender, nor would he run away. On the contrary, he wanted to fight. This was what they least wanted to see, because many of them were expelled from the tribe and gathered in the south because they were afraid of fighting the fierce enemies in the north. They were actually cowards in the north, a group of deserters who were afraid of the bear shamans and the ogre trolls. This was the case with Alphas and the leader Svak. On the contrary, there were very few failed marriages like Ursuline who were driven out for no apparent reason, because they offended the War Mother's wife. Standing in the most standard cavalry charge posture, Svente slowly crossed his sword by his side, holding the reins tightly with his left hand. He wanted to charge. He wanted to fight. He was destined to die here. He wanted to use his burning soul to burn the cowardice of the Damashia soldiers. He wanted to dedicate his life to his own beliefs and will. The mission of a cavalryman is to charge, not to escape. Damashia Ranger. With a broken throat, Svente's voice became hoarse and very unpleasant. Charge. Shh. At this moment, it was the bravest and most fearless warhorse in the world. Svente believed this, even though this was their first meeting. Kill. The hoarse war roar of the Damatians was in his ears. Alpha stared blankly at the Damatian coward charging at him, as if he had returned to that snowy night when he had refused to enter the snowfield again to look for supplies, because he had witnessed his son being slaughtered and eaten by crazy bear men. The War Mother's eyes had never been so disappointed. When he came to his senses, the barbarian had just raised his axe, and before he had time to shake his wrist, a cold light flashed, and his vision began to spin and fly. At the last moment, Alpha saw his headless body in the hand axe that fell to the ground. His arms had been hanging down. It turned out that it had always been an illusion. Until the moment of his death, he did not dare to aim the axe he had lost all his life at the Damatian, who was charging at him. He did not raise his hand axe at all. He was terrified. So, I'm the coward, huh? His consciousness was completely immersed in darkness. Kill him. Svak, who had a river-shaped battle pattern on his face, was the first to react and roared at the knight who dared to provoke him. On the way to charge, Svente bent down to avoid the oncoming spinning stone flying rope, and as if by miracle, he used his long sword to pick up the whistling flying axe. The nervous ranger cut off another head with his long sword, and then was hit in the chest by a flying axe flying from the right front. He fell off the horse with a plop, rolled several times, half knelt and supported himself with a long sword in front of him, and lost his breath. After the master fell, the horse did not run away, but accelerated again to rush towards the barbarian warrior, but unfortunately the spinning stone flying rope hit his front legs, and fell to the ground, and then the barbarian cut his throat with a long sword. With an unwilling neigh, the warhorse slowly closed his eyes, and stared at the direction where his new master fell. The barbarian warrior who saw the fierce horse die and the angry neighing, and successfully killed the Damashionite with a flying axe, did not feel any joy, but felt cold all over. Perhaps everything in front of them was too shocking, and the barbarian bandits present were a little overwhelmed for a while. These southerners did not seem to be as cowardly as imagined. Damashia. The ranger warrior Boris of the 1st Legion is here. Following the knight Svente. Damashia. The ranger warrior Noquist of the 1st Legion is here. Following the knight Svente. Damashia. The ranger warrior Masulchi of the 1st Legion is here. Following the knight Svente. Damashia. The ranger warrior Karamis of the 1st Legion is here. Following the knight Svente. After Svente fell, 4 more rangers who had not completely left returned to the battlefield and roared at the hordes of frail-jawed bandits. Damatian rangers. Charge. Charge. Kill. Facing the well-prepared bandits, the charge of the light cavalry was too weak. The knights were hit by the spinning throwing weapons halfway through their journey. They fell off their horses and were killed by the Friljordians. Many villagers witnessed everything in front of them. In pain, they placed their right arms between their teeth, clenched their teeth, and forced themselves to hold back their cries of sorrow. They let the tears flow down their cheeks, but dared not make a sound. There are always people who need to pass on their heroic deeds, even if it means sacrificing their own dignity. Feeling a huge humiliation, Svok took 2 steps forward and chopped off the head of the dead knight with a sword. Kill them. We are the winners. Kill them all. Chapter 94 Crushing. In other words, there were still villagers in the village who had not evacuated, and you had not defeated the bandits, so you escaped. It was not an escape, but a temporary evacuation. Lord Swordsman Kraken. These bandits were too cunning. They defeated my cavalry with flying ropes that I had never seen before. I must be responsible for my cavalry and cannot let them all die in the village. The man on the horse had a sad face, as if he had experienced a difficult and bloody battle. Kraken took a deep look at the captain of the Rangers, whose equipment was neat and tidy, but whose face looked like he had lost a bloody battle. He ignored him and turned to the coachman and said, "Full speed ahead. Don't worry about the horsepower." "Yes, Lord Kraken." The coachman whipped the horse hard on the horse's back, and the horse felt pain, neighed, and ran forward faster. "Master Kraken Swordsman, we will cover your flanks." The ranger captain found that he seemed to be disliked by the swordsman commander of the Steel Swordsman Corps, so he gave up the idea of flattering him and led his remaining dozen of subordinates to follow far behind him so that he could escape quickly if things went wrong. The man secretly hoped that the Steel Swordsman Corps would be defeated by the barbarians so that he would have enough reasons for his failure. As for the dead Steel Swordsman, what does that have to do with me? New changes appeared on the battlefield. Orsolon and his companions stopped searching for corpses, held the sophisticated weapons they had robbed, and looked at the uninvited guests on the carriage vigilantly. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 carriages in total, only 16 people. Orsolon breathed a sigh of relief, looked around, and couldn't help but feel much more at ease. Would more than 60 well-equipped northern warriors be defeated by 16 weak Dalmatians? Glancing at the Dalmatian knights surrounding the outermost, Orsolon sneered. After all the true warriors died, only cowards were left. Outside the village of Homes, the horses knelt down tiredly. 16 steel swordsmen wearing heavy and sophisticated dense silver iron-studded armor jumped off the carriage, and the blue cloaks behind them fluttered in the wind. First squad, listen up. Charge formation. Second squad, listen up. Charge formation. In the cold voices of Kraken and Neltis, the 16 people were divided into 2 groups, with 2 squad leaders and deputies as the core, forming 2 groups of 8 people in the arrow-shaped charge formation. As the formation was set, the frail-jawed bandits who had just breathed a sigh of relief in the distance instantly felt a strong pressure, and the breathtaking momentum rushed towards them, and they couldn't help but become alert. These Dalmatian soldiers seemed to be different from others. What are you afraid of? We have much more people than them. Start the battle, set up the formation, and kill them all at once. But before the bandits took the initiative to attack, the Dalmatian steel swordsmen 100 meters away made new moves. The blood of the warriors will never be shed in vain. Kraken's voice was high and solemn. Be brave and fearless. Never retreat until death. The steel sword will not break. The city of glory will be fortified. Dalmatia. All of us are united. As if chanting some magical spell, the spirit of the 16 steel swordsmen reached the peak. The terrifying killing intent had been completely poured on the mithril swords, and the many bandits seemed to have returned to the cruel snowy night of Freljord in an instant. Don't spare any of them. Kill. Throw weapons. Disrupt their formation. Facing 2 fast-moving silver arrows, the Freljord bandits in a skirmisher formation began to throw the weapons in their hands, spinning stone slings, bone clubs, hand axes, and even short spears. They rushed forward to meet the flying weapons, most of which were blocked by the mithril broadswords in front of them, and the few weapons that hit the body were blocked by the hard mithril steel. After a wave of attacks, only an extremely unlucky steel swordsman from the second team was hit by a spinning flying axe on the leather underarm that was not protected by steel armor. He twitched a few times and fell directly to the ground, his life or death unknown. The dense charge formation was not broken, and the frail-jawed bandits looked a little ugly. These Dalmatians were more difficult to deal with than imagined. The distance of 100 meters was fleeting, and the second opportunity to throw weapons was lost. Facing the fearless charge of the Dalmatians, the barbarian bandits chose to surround and kill the steel swordsmen in a dense formation. Surround them. originally thought that they could stop the Dalmatians with excellent individual combat power and then strangle all the Dalmatians with the advantage of large numbers. At the moment of close combat, the bandit, who was directly cut in half by the silver sword with his broken fine iron longsword, understood what it meant to be a mantis trying to stop a chariot or an ant trying to shake a tree. The steel swordsman wielded the broad-bladed silver sword in his hand, tearing open the first layer of a human wall that was like paper, and blocked the attack of the fine iron longsword with his hard silver armor, and then directly rushed forward with his body in a roar. The barbarian warrior who was knocked away vomited blood and flew backwards, his life or death unknown. The dense formation was broken, and the combat casualties were instantly more than half. The robbers were completely pierced by 2 indestructible silver arrows, and the formation was in chaos, and the momentum dropped sharply. They had never seen such terrible warriors and armies. The terrible thing was that they saw it today, and they lost the opportunity to see it again. Because life is only once. Demacia. The bloody Demacia steel swordsman was in high spirits, and he was murderous. He killed every frail-jawed barbarian he saw with his excellent equipment, just like cutting melons and vegetables, because the order given by Kraken was not to spare any. The battle became one-sided. When the equipment, momentum and fighting skills were all at a disadvantage, even if the physical strength was comparable to that of the Dalmatians, the frail-jawed barbarian bandits lost their last hope of winning. After the defeat, the frail-jawed bandits began to flee to the north, and Ursulan, who had grabbed a horse, was among them. At this moment, only the coldness of the snowfield could give him a little comfort. Unfortunately, in the hands of the angry steel swordsman, most people could not return to the snowfield. We surrender. Don't kill us. Some bandits who were unable to escape, knelt on the ground, and dropped their weapons, but the next moment their heads fell to the ground, and the deep fear remained unchanged in their eyes. The battle situation was already decided, and the captain of the rangers who were surrounding them, and taking advantage of the situation brightened his eyes, and gave orders to the knights behind him. Chase and kill those bandits who tried to escape. Remember to cut off their heads for me. Yes. A dozen knights rode away quickly on their horses to chase and kill the fleeing soldiers. The captain of the rangers, holding the reins and standing still, glanced sarcastically at Sventa, who was surrounded by the corpses of bandits, kneeling on one knee, and supporting himself with his sword, and spat to the side with disdain. I told you to pretend. If you follow me well, you can have a good life, and get a lot of military merits, but you insist on being a hero, you fool. Looking at the back of the young swordsman, the man galloped on his horse, and joined the battle sequence. Demacia has never lacked heroes, how can you be one? You are overestimating yourself. At the forefront of the crowd, Kraken waved his silver sword silently, taking lives one by one in anger. Only at this moment, he didn't want to consider justice or injustice, he just wanted to end it all in a military way. There were no prisoners in this battle. I'll post this chapter as soon as possible. I have a severe cold and fever these 2 days. My head feels like it's filled with lead. I can't read everyone's comments, nor can I reply in time. I asked my boss for 3 days off. I haven't typed a word for 2 days. I'm lying in bed like a dead dog. I will continue to reply to you when I feel better. First of all, I apologize to everyone. Hangai's writing skills are not good enough, which has brought you an unpleasant reading experience. You can support the book for a while and support it after it is put on the shelves. There is still a long way to go. Can you at least let me finish writing Twin Cities before deleting the book? Regarding the issue of Demacia, everyone says that it has no beginning or end, but I wrote it with the Kraken as the beginning and the end. I will present the development of Demacia from the perspective of the Kraken. You can regard the Kraken as the protagonist of Demacia. After that, there is Riz who collects runes in the Freljord. These are 2 important characters besides the protagonist. Even if I have to write about them in a haphazard way, I have to write about them. Regarding the issue of the protagonist and the dragon bird, I admit that it is a big failure, which makes many people feel uncomfortable. Many people deleted the book without giving them a chance to explain. But think about it from another perspective. The protagonist just uses his hands to help the Estrus pet relieve its restlessness, which is the same as the owner patting the back of a cat in Estrus to relieve the heat. It's really no big deal. The dragon bird is an important mount for the protagonist. Without the dragon bird, it is difficult for the protagonist to travel across continents. In addition, the dragon bird will also lead to the branch line of Vastea. In the end, the dragon bird will become a magical shapeshifter and become a cute humanoid queen. In addition, everyone also wants to know what the ancestors of Nico are like, right? I'm very satisfied to see that some book friends support me as always. Chapter 95, The Undercurrent of Emerald Territory. That's Freljord over there. It's so beautiful from afar. Huluwoohoo, before his eyes was a silver blue tranquil world with endless stars in the sky, and everything in front of him was so beautiful that it didn't seem like a scene from the human world. This was Valoran, and this world was the land of runes, a dreamy and cruel place. Looking at the silver white world in the northwest, Lester's ears seemed to have heard the whistling wind and the frozen ice field, and the high and hot sound of the magic crystal arrow. Should I take the true ice longbow back in advance and give it to Ash? After all, there is no faster way to improve her favorability than giving gifts. Woo 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 Gilu Silvermoon, you think too much. When Ash is born, I will become a legend of Narxus, an ancestor recorded in history. Maybe I can give the true ice longbow to Lysandra in Frostgird Fortress. Do you think Lysandra will shout magic crystal arrow? It should be possible. She is blind, not dumb. Gilu. Lester said something nonsense and touched the big head drooping beside him. He felt a little lost. Snowflakes began to fall from the sky. The rich ice element surrounded Lester and cheered, but the man had no intention of studying ice magic. There are many things in the future that I can't see. Sensing Lester's low mood, Silvermoon, the silver-winged dragon bird, stretched out his long tongue and licked the back of the man's hand. Silver-winged dragon bird also tried to lick his face and then realized that the man didn't like it when he licked his face. Because of this incident, she didn't lay eggs with her mate for 2 whole days, and for this reason, she also learned how to use her right paw to express direction. It's been a month. Lester sighed, stood up, and walked towards the cave. Try to fly south tomorrow. South? Which direction do you remember? Woo woo. The silver-winged dragon bird nodded with wide eyes and poked the direction of the emerald collar with its silver right front paw. Do you understand what the word landing means? Silvermoon flapped its wings and slowly took off, then quickly landed. Nodding, Lester's face was more smiling. Smart boy, well done. I'll give you a reward tonight. Eyeing the silver-winged dragon bird stood up and took a figure-8 step, following the man step by step into the cave, and the snow-capped peaks once again returned to their previous tranquility. Emerald collar. Even Margaret, who had the most confidence in Lester, had lost her confidence. After a month of disappearance, the matter has reached a point where it is difficult to cover up, especially after Ms. Rose's visit. I don't know when, there were more rumors about the death of the Lord in the Emerald Territory, and the people's hearts began to waver. No one knew what terrible things would happen tomorrow. Kiram had informed the other party half a month ago. Fortunately, the honest man did keep his mouth shut and did not talk about it everywhere. He just sighed a few more times every day. Zinna's little face was once again shrouded in indissoluble sorrow. As for Mishap, she had long let go of her missing big brother and lived her life peacefully. She just looked at the north and stared at the sky every day. There were many contradictions directed at Meredith, the female mage who was traveling with Lester. Even though she understood everything that happened at that time, Margaret began to have opinions about the female mage and became much colder than before. At least in Margaret's opinion, if she had been the one protecting the Lord at that time, the premise of the Lord's disappearance must have been that she had died in battle. After the Lord was in trouble, she would not have returned to the Emerald Territory alive. Because of these things, Meredith stayed in his room all day and did not go out, which also gave Tally, who was learning magic from Meredith, more free time. The two sisters became worried. Although they still looked harmonious and happy on the surface, they knew that the undercurrent under the Emerald Territory was much greater than what they saw. In a secret room in the military camp, Margaret, the commander of the Black Iron Guard, was having a secret conversation with Apsa, the leader of the Shadow Crossbowmen. Have you investigated the matter clearly? Who was behind this during this period? Was it Harold? Under the light of the torch, the blonde girl wearing magic steel armor, Blackguard, had a flash of cold murderous intent in her eyes. Apsa shook his head. The evidence I have now can only confirm that it was a political officer named Liebert under Harold who deliberately spread the rumor of Lord Leicester's death and secretly instigated the Mombians to revolt. As for whether Harold knew about it, we don't know. Keep a close eye on Liebert and those traitors who want to join the rebellion. Margaret's voice was as cold as ice. Once it is confirmed that it was Harold who was behind it, immediately arrest all the political officers of Harold's line. I will pry open their mouths with my own hands and dig out their dirty hearts. It's not good to do this, right? After all, he is a political officer appointed by Lord Leicester himself. He has always cooperated with us. It will be a bit painful for us to arrest him. Apsa hesitated a little. Although he knew that he could not persuade him, he still tried to dissuade him. Any traitor who betrayed Lord Leicester is not worth any hesitation. They must all be tortured and executed. If Lord Leicester comes back to investigate my crimes, I can commit suicide. Okay. Apsa was helpless. It was worthy of being the cold-blooded Margaret. Her expression eased slightly, and Margaret said in a deep voice, "Now is an extraordinary time, and extraordinary times require extraordinary means. Many things still rely on your help, and you have to work hard. You don't have to tell me. I voluntarily followed Lord Leicester, otherwise I would have left when the warehouse killed those villagers from Noel Village. Now everyone can see how good the Emerald Territory is." Rolling his eyes, Apsal was a little amused, and then seemed to think of something troublesome, and was a little worried. "The problem is, Ms. Rose, what should we do?" Thinking of Rose, even Margaret had a headache, and the girl with short golden hair shook her head. "We can't control Ms. Rose's affairs." But a Black Rose mage discovered the activities of the red-skinned demon rats at the entrance of the mine tunnel yesterday through the surveillance guards left in the mine. I will send more Black Iron guards to guard the entrance of the mine tunnel. I will transfer all the Black Guards to the entrance of the mine tunnel for vigilance. The security of the city still depends on you. It's a pity that Lord Leicester's Nightblade Killer has not returned yet. Otherwise, with the Nightblade Killer, I would be much more relaxed here. After the two of them exchanged some ideas, they quickly left the secret room and began to make corresponding arrangements. On the other side, in Meredith's wooden house, Rose looked coldly at the female mage sitting in the chair without saying a word, and said lightly, "Ms. Meredith, don't you want to explain? 5 updates will be released on the 1st, and 5 updates on the 2nd. The update on the 3rd depends on the monthly votes. My promise is still valid. In addition, the VIP chapter will be released on the 1st, which may be released later. Don't wait tonight." It was almost time for the book to be put on the shelves, but many people left. It's a pity that we couldn't continue together, but most of those who stayed here are true fans. Let me give you all a warm hug to express my gratitude. Those who are going to order the book first, please remember to place the first order. Let me see how much staying power this book has. Everyone get on board first, and Han Guy will think of a solution. I won't explain whether it's water or not. There are always people who are not satisfied. Some book friends said it well. The problem with this writing style is that the time span of publishing and uploading is too long. It is really difficult to follow up the plot of the previous part with 2 chapters a day, especially when many events span more than 10 chapters. If I can release 10 chapters at a time, no one will blame me. This book is fun to read together. There are many people chasing more. What's funny is that many book friends are unwilling to wait because I release chapters too slowly. They delete the book without giving me any chance. This is also a big wonder. By the way, the content released during the new book period is free. From November 14th to December 31st, in the 1.5 months, if there were no book friends willing to reward, I would not get a penny for more than 200,000 words. I won't say much about the rest. Whether it's naked running or generating electricity for love, as long as there are still people supporting it, this book will be written to 2 million words. Damn, you are playing a mental attack on me, right? This book is unique in the Runeland fanfiction. I don't believe that this book can't be popular. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96, A Secret Conversation Between Two Female Mages. Ms. Rose, I have nothing to say. Meredith's expression was very calm. Even though the fearsome female mage Rose was sitting in front of her, she did not show the guilty or panic expression she had in the past. Because of my incompetence, I failed to protect Lord Lester, which led to Lord Lester being captured by the dragon bird. This is a cause and effect. As for why I didn't report it to you, it was because I believed that Lord Lester could come back on his own. For this matter, I'm willing to take all the blame. After taking a deep look at the female mage who once guarded Blackthorn Rose Street, Rose understood that the female mage in front of her had indeed changed. Some positive changes. Unfortunately, the guilt of inadequate protection could not be excused. We'll talk about the punishment later. Rose closed her eyes and slowly leaned back in her chair. Tell me everything you encountered on your way back. Don't leave out any details. Yes, Ms. Rose. In the quiet room, Meredith told Rose in detail what happened at that time, including the description of the silver-winged dragon bird and Lester's deliberate attention to the two sisters. Finally, he added the situation of the first encounter with the dragon bird's attack. After pondering, Rose opened her eyes, a little confused. According to you, the silver-winged dragon bird's target was Lester, and the dragon bird was still on Lester's head when you went to the Immortal Fortress. That thing. Although she felt that the topic was a bit embarrassing, Meredith nodded and told the truth. That's right. At that time, it was me who assisted Lord Lester in cleaning his body with magic. It seemed that the silver-winged dragon bird had targeted Lord Lester because of his exposure that time. At that time, Lord Lester joked that he had remembered a shameless little guy and said that he would treat us to roast bird meat. You said, without any hatred or grudge, why would a bird with dragon blood target a man it had only met once? From your description, if the dragon bird's goal was to kill Lester, as long as it flew into the sky and struggled to break free and swung, Lester might not be able to hold on to it, and he would almost fall to death. Rose raised her eyebrows, stroking her smooth chin. In other words, the silver-winged dragon bird captured Lester for another purpose. Could it be to feed the young in the nest? But if that was the case, it could have just captured the dead horses or other soldiers. Why did it specifically target Lester? It doesn't make sense. So after I came back, I thought about it for a long time and came up with a somewhat unbelievable guess. It's too bizarre, and there's no evidence. It's all based on my intuition, so I haven't told anyone. What guess? Taking a deep breath, Meredith responded to Rose's gaze. That dragon bird, most likely, was a female, and for some reason, she had taken a fancy to Lord Lester, so she specifically attacked the convoy, and didn't kill anyone, and the most serious injuries to the soldiers were only minor injuries. The dragon bird used its claws to attack Lord Lester at that time only to capture him, not to kill him, which can also explain why the dragon bird didn't try to get rid of Lord Lester after taking off. If the purpose of the dragon bird was to capture Lord Lester and bring him back to its nest, then everything makes sense. Rose suddenly stood up from her chair, pacing back and forth with a solemn expression, and this rare posture actually scared Meredith. Lester was taken a fancy to by a dragon bird. How can this be? No, that's not right. There is this possibility. If it's that, then it makes sense. Meredith also stood up, staring at the powerful female mage in front of her who was a little out of control. Ms. Rose, do you know something? Knowing that the female mage in front of her might know the reason, the slightly disrespectful you instantly changed to you. Rose looked at Meredith and changed the subject. You are still a virgin. Lester didn't touch you, did you? Meredith was stunned, as if she didn't expect Rose to ask such a question. No, I don't have any special relationship with Lord Lester. That man has high standards, and it's understandable that he doesn't like you. The key is, what do you think? Although the overly straightforward words were a bit hurtful, Meredith also understood that the reason why she was arranged to be with Lester was because her appearance was neither outstanding nor mediocre. Compared with many female mages who deliberately used magic to maintain their appearance, she could only be considered above average. Compared with most mortals, Her appearance was not bad, but she lacked a lot of barbarian femininity compared to the barbarian sisters, and she couldn't be compared with Ms. Rose or Miss Valentina, two sisters who were as beautiful as the gods. I don't know. Meredith lowered her head. Maybe I have such an idea, and one day I will be favored by Lestat, but now I just want to do my part. Meredith, you don't need to worry about my thoughts. In my opinion, it doesn't matter how many women Lestat has. I won't be angry about it, even if it's you. Rose never expected that she would hit the nail on the head when she spoke, and Meredith was stunned. That's why I didn't stop him from taking in those two barbarian girls and raising those two beautiful girls. Rose sighed. The road to studying black magic is rugged and dangerous. We may die at any time, and we can't have children. No black magician can pat his chest and guarantee that he can live safely forever. In this position, I have no reason to stop Lestat from looking for other women to reproduce. I just want me to be the first in his heart. That's enough. It doesn't mean that she is experienced in seducing men with other clones. Rose used a perfect reason and excuse to cover up the real reason for her generosity. I can see that you have a great affection for Lestat, or rather, most creatures in the material world have a great affection for Lestat, and the closer they are to nature, the more so. Regardless of gender, race, and even, it's about power. People who are sensitive to power are more likely to indulge. Women, or females, are just more likely to have a liking for him than men. You like him not for your reasons, but for his reasons, because even I'm the same. Meredith looked at Rose in horror as she spoke the terrible information, swallowed hard, and the female mage's voice was a little dry. How do you say that? Chapter 97 The Power of Runes and the Wandering Mage. This is an important secret I want to tell you. You must swear a magic oath and promise me not to tell anyone else. You must obey my arrangements, and help me investigate Lester. Rose's face suddenly became serious. Can you swear? From today on, be my eyes beside Lester. Her heart began to pound. Meredith knew what this meant. Any true confidant chosen by Ms. Rose would swear a cruel oath. Being regarded as a confidant by Ms. Rose is not only a handy tool, but also the most complete maintenance and protection, and a superior status in the Black Rose Academy. Compared with other heavy oaths, to be loyal to the lady for a lifetime, the oath of being a spy is like a leaf blocking the way. Light as a feather cannot be used to describe Ms. Rose's preferential treatment of herself, but she really likes to stay by Lester's side and do things, and she doesn't want to let herself deceive that man with other thoughts and psychological burdens. Sorry, Ms. Rose, I'm afraid I can't do this. Rose's smile disappeared instantly, and the woman became expressionless. In an instant, evil enveloped her soul, and Meredith saw her own end. It was deep darkness and despair. Few people dare to refuse my invitation in person, and such a privilege is unique. Meredith, you should know what this means. This means that I chose Lestat, not you. In fear, Meredith said this in her heart, but her mouth could not make any sound. I don't know when, a dark magic chain has been wrapped around the mage's neck, tightening more and more, and other parts of the body are also tightly wrapped by the chain. The mage's breathing is getting weaker and weaker, and her cheeks are beginning to turn purple. You chose Lestat, which means disloyalty and betrayal. In the Black Rose, what is the price of traitors? You know better than anyone. Even so, you have to take this desperate road. Rose stared at the mage in front of her coldly, without a trace of pity in her eyes. At the moment, when the mage was about to lose consciousness completely, the black magic chain dissipated out of thin air, and the mage knelt on the ground, covering her purple neck, and gasping for breath. After an unknown amount of time, Meredith knelt on one knee on the ground, her voice hoarse. Thank you, madam, for not killing me. Rose sat back on the chair, squinting her eyes, and crossing her legs. I didn't kill you, because you are still useful to Lester now. You don't need to thank me. You should thank the man you like. Looking up, Meredith shook her head. I was the first to betray the Black Rose and Madame Rose. Madame Rose, you left me a way to live. I will not be ungrateful. Staring expressionlessly at the kneeling female wizard for a long time, the haze dissipated, and a satisfied smile appeared on the corner of Rose's mouth. The soul-stirring murderous intent completely dissipated, and the deadly black magic that disappeared without a trace. Get up. Yes. Meredith stood up. Rose smiled, stood up, and pulled Meredith to sit on the bed, sitting side by side. Since you are unwilling to be my eyes and ears, I have to communicate with you about Lester's problems as an equal. If you are really doing this for Lester's good, believe me, investigating some things will be very important. Ms. Rose, please speak. I think you should know the origin rune, right? Recalling the books she had read in the library of the Black Rose Academy, Meredith nodded. The book seems to have mentioned that those runes are the foundation of the magical power of this world. Each rune has a powerful force beyond the imagination of mortals. No matter who obtains the rune, they can become a strong man beyond mortals. It happened decades ago. The news that the world rune surfaced on the ground spread from the Blessed Light Island. A tragic rune war broke out on the continent. The runes were broken into pieces and scattered in the power of destruction. The population of the Loran continent dropped to less than 1% of the original. The crystal life of Shurima fell into a deep sleep in fear. It seems that you have done a good job of homework. Nodding, Rose said lightly. If my judgment is correct, Lester has a complete world rune fused into his body, not a fragment. What I want you to do is to investigate this world rune. In addition to making women like him, what other specific effects does it have? In the north of the Freljord ice field, in this barren land, a lonely traveler is measuring every inch of land under his feet in the wind and snow, looking for countless lonely destinations that will never end. The traveler's whole body is covered tightly with a grey fur cloak, and he carries a long leather bag made of the skin of a wyvern on his back. The only thing that the ice beasts along the way can see is a pair of resolute light blue eyes hidden under the hood of the cloak. Woo 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 woo. A hungry little snow wolf followed the traveler from a distance, as if he wanted to attack, but was afraid of the power that made him uneasy. He hesitated and consumed his limited physical energy. Little guy, if you can't learn to restrain your desires, you will die sooner or later on this weeping land, because you don't know what kind of cruel hunter the prey you meet is, a cold-blooded person who won't even let go of his closest relatives. The traveler suddenly stopped, pulled his blue-purple arm out of his cloak, touched the large cloth bag on his waist, and took out a piece of pickled dried meat. Turning around, the traveler threw the dried meat behind him. Hesitating for a moment, following the smell of the dried meat, the snow wolf tucked its tail between its legs and approached the dried meat vigilantly. After finding that the traveler was just looking at it without any extra movements, it quickly picked up the dried meat and fled backwards without hesitation. In the case of obtaining food, the snow wolf still chose to stay away from this unknown prey that frightened him from the bottom of his heart. Smart little guy, I wish you a nice day. Sighing, patting his empty large cloth bag, the lonely traveler carried his leather bag on his back and walked towards the north again. Is there a village ahead? The traveler's back soon disappeared in the ice and snow. The location of Nelzayag is very awkward. The cold falls, which originates from the north, flows down slowly. The few fish and shrimps in the cold stream have long been plundered by the gathering places in the upper and middle reaches. When the cold stream flows through Nelzayag, only the crystal clear ice water is left, which is purer than the most perfect ice and the newborn Freljord girl. In Desperation, because there happened to be several pieces of land suitable for cultivating wheat fields to the south of the village, the northerners living in Nelzayag had to learn from the southerners to build a simple mill that could grind grains into food, trying to become a village that could stably produce bread for other materials. Unfortunately, the mill was built, but when it was built, the villagers found that there was not enough grain for the village to produce bread. In addition, a group of trolls happened to appear near the farmland in the south near the Iron Mountains. They wandered around waving wooden sticks all day, attacking the villagers and trampling on the farmland, making it impossible for the villagers to farm with peace of mind. Life became increasingly difficult. Chapter 98 Nelzayag. There are outsiders coming. Come quickly. The sharp-eyed tribal warriors at the outermost edge roared loudly, and then a dozen strong men holding stone spears rushed over quickly. The traveler with the hood on his head stopped and put down his hood, revealing a hideous blue-purple face. Some tribal warriors noticed that there were strange symbols and stripes on the stranger's face, which made people feel physically uncomfortable just by looking at it. Who are you? What are you doing here? The traveler knew that, if he dared to show a trace of hostility, the dozen men in front of him would not hesitate to raise their spears and stab him into his body, so he slowed down his movements as much as possible to avoid misunderstandings and lead to the destruction of the village. My name is Riz, I'm a wandering mage, and I have been exploring my own magical path. Slowly showing the empty food bag to the tribal warriors surrounding him, and responding to the nervous crowd in Freljord, Riz was a little helpless. As you can see, I have eaten all the food. I came to the village, just to ask for some food. I have no ill intentions. Naturally, he would not reveal his true intentions. It was true, that the wandering wizard had no food. You mean, you are a wizard? The kind that can throw fireballs? The tall northern man in the lead waved his hand, signaling the tribe to stay calm. Yes, if pure magic energy can be considered a fireball. After taking another look at the wandering wizard with blue-purple skin, the tall man asked again, "What's wrong with your skin? Why did it become so scary?" He had already explained it countless times, but Riz was still patient. He was always patient with most creatures in this world, unless the creature had evil things that did not belong to him. This is the price of studying magic. Pointing to his blue-purple arm, Riz smiled and was very friendly. I took a wrong turn and ended up like this. That's why I chose to cover my body as much as possible with my cloak and hood. Pulling at his fur cloak, Riz pointed to the curious tribal child in the distance, looking very sincere. It's best not to scare others, especially children, who are afraid of this. Seeing the scary blue-skinned man pointing at him, the little boy ran away in fear. Witnessing this scene, Riz sighed. As if moved by Riz's sincere and harmless attitude, the tall man put away his weapon and signaled the tribesmen to put down their hostility. My name is Ainkasad, and I'm the village chief of Neilzag. The villagers here are all Freljord people who are unwilling to obey the rule of the three major tribes. We have formed a new village and live here together. Hello, village chief Ainkasad. Thank you for letting me into the village. Knowing that the powerful tribes in Freljord are all led by war mothers, Riz is a little curious about this small village that dares to resist the three major tribes. There is no village or shop in the distance. No wonder they chose to build the village here. I'll let you into the village for a purpose. Adhering to the straightforward way of speaking in Freljord, Ainkasad took Riz back to his wooden house. With the blazing fire, the temperature was much warmer. Riz understood that this was a good place to talk business. We don't have much food, so we can't give it to you for free. You should understand how precious it is in Freljord to have something that can be put into the stomach without killing people. Nodding, the wandering wizard said nothing. Food and cold are the biggest obstacles to the development and growth of the Freljord people. The overly poor and harsh environment caused many Freljord people to die at the moment they were born into the world. In order to control the population, many tribes even banned reproductive behavior within the tribe. Once discovered, they would be beaten directly. Cowards, disabled people, the elderly and the incompetent cannot survive in Freljord. This is a place where the dead are crying every moment. The only ones who don't cry are the living, because their tears have long been frozen. In this land, where everything is frozen, only the hot and hard hearts in the chest still have temperature. This also leads to the fact that the people of Freljord are straightforward. But I just happen to have an errand for you. If you can do it, I can fill your sack with bread. Knowing that the errand would definitely not be easy, Riz did not refuse directly, but asked, "Tell me first. If it is beyond my ability, I'm afraid I can't do it." "It is not beyond your ability, provided that you are indeed a mage, not a weirdo who dyes his skin blue and purple." Ainkasad sighed and said slowly, "Just to the south of the village, there are 3 wheat fields. Everything was going well, and it was almost harvest time. Alas. Are you in trouble?" "Yes, just 3 days ago, a group of adult trolls suddenly came to the north of the Iron Mountains. There were about 7 or 8 of them. They drove the northern yaks to graze on the farmland. Not only did they destroy the farmland, they also attacked the farmers in the wheat fields. 3 people in our village have died at the hands of those trolls. So you want me to drive the trolls away? I would rather you kill them, if you can do it, so that after you leave, those stinky idiots won't appear on our farmland again and trample on the crops with their disgusting toes." Rubbing his chin without comment, Riz did not respond. "We don't have much food left. If we give you extra food, People in the village will starve to death. After hesitating for a while, Einkus had also compromised. If you can kill all those trolls, I will give you an extra bag of food, as long as you can kill them. I can't guarantee that I can kill them all. I can only try my best to drive them away. After thinking for a moment, Riz put forward his own conditions. Disappointment flashed across his face, and Einkus had thought about it and made a supplement. If my warriors fight with you, how far can you go? Not wanting to casually agree to a request involving unwarranted killing and grudges, Riz answered ambiguously. It depends on the situation. Before setting off, Riz replenished some drinking water, and then released his magical energy under Einkus's arrangement. Looking at the stubborn stone that was easily broken, Einkus and the 12 tribal warriors recognized the strength of the wandering wizard, and had more confidence in this operation to drive away the trolls. Everything was arranged properly, and with 2 days of food, a group of 13 people began to walk south. Chapter 99 Brutal Suppression. The whistling cold wind was in his ears. The man held the dragon bird's neck tightly and flew through the white clouds. Even with his affinity for ice element, Lester felt that he was stripped naked, tied up like a dumpling, and stuffed into a freezer. Woo 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 tired Jiang Luo. Give me a chance. Lester shouted loudly in dismay, his lips fluttering as a strong wind poured into his mouth. Woo woo woo. Hearing the familiar command, the silver-winged dragon bird looked down, found a suitable landing place, and flew down quickly. Lester jumped off the dragon bird's neck and stood on the grey big stone. His hair and eyelashes were covered with frost, like a funny Santa Claus. Unlike the first low-altitude flight, when he was afraid that his spouse would fall to death, the silver-winged dragon bird was extremely excited this time and flew high in the sky happily, almost freezing Lester into an ice stick. Fortunately, the speed was not slow. While using the training posture to relieve the stiffness and coldness of his body, Lester confirmed his location, which was probably in the middle of the north-south section of the Urus Mountains, and only 10 minutes away from the Emerald Territory. When his body was almost recovered, Lester climbed onto Silvermoon's neck again and issued an order. South. Hielu. Time went back to 1 day ago. In the western part of the Emerald Territory, the Government Affairs Processing Hut. In the room with the locked door, Leobert was trying hard to persuade the government officer Harold. Elder Harold, that son of a bitch Lester from Naxos has died outside. Now is our chance to destroy and control the Emerald Territory. Our time has come. Leobert was not worried that his voice would be heard by outsiders, because outside the room, his own people in armor were guarding. Are you dissatisfied with your current life, Leobert? The reason why I chose to let you be in charge of the mobilization of the people is not to make you rebel. It's not too late to leave here now. I will pretend that I didn't see anything and heard nothing. Harold, who was terrified and ready to report after the other party left, sat steadily on the main wooden chair, looking calm. Hearing Harold's words, the man's face was a little distorted. This should be our territory. It is the home of the Mombia people. It is what those Naxan bandits robbed with swords and killing. No matter how good our life is, this land does not belong to us after all. We should take it back. The Emerald Territory should be renamed Nokmachi. Can you tolerate those brutal Naxan barbarians shitting and pissing on your head every day? So, do you think the days of building walls and growing corn were better than now? Standing up from the wooden chair, Harold sighed and said sincerely, go back, Leobert. Even if you want to rebel, how can you deal with the terrible Naxan Black Iron Guards and Shadow Crossbowmen? Can you rely on 2 or 3 resentful Mombians? Leobert responded to Harold's gaze without showing any weakness, and said in a deep voice, Elder Harold, even if we can't control the Emerald Territory, we can burn down most of the buildings and let the Emerald Territory fall into a state of disorder and collapse. After that, as long as we ask Demacia to send troops, we can restore the previous rule. At that time, you will be the ruler of Nokmachi and the chief of the Mombians. The man's tone gradually became higher and his expression gradually became crazy, which made Harold completely understand that the man in front of him had completely lost his mind. We won't do better than Lester. Don't you understand this? I will never associate with you. So, you are willing to work for that savage dog Lester even if you die? Haha, you are really a traitor and a lackey. Taking out a small dagger from his arms, Leobert approached Harold. I've given you a chance, Elder Harold. Now that you know our secret, please go to hell. The wooden door had been opened at some point, and a crossbow arrow pierced Liabet's right upper arm. Feeling the pain, Liabet dropped the dagger, covered his right upper arm, and turned around in horror. Harold wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, looked at Absol who appeared at the door, and sighed that he had made the right bet. The shadow crossbowman took Liabet, who looked at Hen, away. Absol looked at Harold deeply, nodded, and turned away. Sitting on the wooden chair behind him, Harold recalled the murderous intent at that moment and slowly closed his eyes. Absolutely, you must not betray the Emerald Territory. That night, Margaret personally tortured and interrogated more than a dozen people who attempted to rebel, and obtained a list of more than a dozen people. The Narcs and Black Iron Guards went out overnight, and launched a bloody suppression. The next morning, many residents of the Emerald Territory woke up, and found that there were 28 fresh corpses on the wooden pole of the execution platform, which had not been hung for a long time. The chests of the corpses were cut open, and there were only creepy white bones in the empty chests. There were small scars all over the body, and many people even had no fingernails, or missing fingers and joints. Seeing such a terrible scene, many residents of the Emerald Territory thought they were scared and fainted. Later, they learned that the remains hanging on the wooden poles were traitors who attempted to betray Lord Lester. After the Black Iron Guards publicly displayed sheepskin confessions in the square, the residents of the territory had a little more recognition and fear of the horrible death in front of them. However, in addition to the complex emotions, Margaret, who personally carried out the interrogation and arrest plan, also gained the terrifying title of Heart Eater. For a time, the Emerald Territory became a little nervous. No one dared to mention the Lord who had been missing for more than a month, and no one dared to commit a crime. Everyone was doing their own things honestly, for fear that they would be targeted by the terrifying Heart Eater. The waves in the dark of the Emerald Territory disappeared briefly, and for a time this peaceful and fertile land restored the good public order of the past. On this day, Meredith was in a deep state of meditation, and soon a Black Rose wizard came to the door. Meredith opened the door, and outside the door was one of the 4 wizards who took turns to monitor the mines in the glittering Silver Mountains. Mage Meredith. Through the perception of the monitoring guards, it has been confirmed that the evil creatures in the mines have made large-scale abnormal movements. General Margaret asked me to inform you to go to the mine entrance and prepare for battle. Urza's hurried look made Meredith's face change slightly. Okay, Master Urza, I'll be there right away. Then I'll go first. After seeing Urza off, Meredith returned to the room, took 2 spellcasting items that might be used, and quickly left the residence. Chapter 100 Return to the Territory. As they approached the Emerald Collar, Lester, who was sitting on the back of the silver-winged dragon bird and observing other dragon birds in the sky along the way, discovered a problem. The silver-winged dragon bad under his, but seemed to be different from the other dragon birds, let alone the strong recovery of Silver Moon after being injured. First of all, there was a big difference in size between the two. The wingspan of other dragon birds was only 5 or 6 meters, while Silver Moon's wingspan was about 8 or 9 meters, and its size was 2 circles larger. In addition, Silver Moon's 4 claws and wings were beautiful silver white, and the easily exposed vital parts were covered with silver scales, which were extremely hard. The other dragon birds were like the goshawks on Earth, with pointed beaks and wings, black and white feathers all over the body, without beautiful silver ink scales, and short necks. If he wanted to ride that kind of dragon bird, he would not ride on the neck, but on the back, and he would have to add a saddle. By analogy, Lester found that Silver Moon was somewhat similar to the giant dragon in the Western mythology of his previous life. At first glance, he was a beautiful, noble and powerful creature. Moreover, when flying over the Urus Mountains, many dragon birds living on the snowy peaks wanted to approach Silver Moon to woo her, but they were scared away by her sharp cries. Lester found their panicked escape funny, and also had a more accurate understanding of Silver Moon's status in the tribe. Silver Moon is probably the queen of dragon birds, and the most beautiful one. No wonder Silver Moon is so overbearing, and wants to catch him back. Woo 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 in the sky, Silver Moon waved her wings happily, while enjoying the pleasure of being ridden. When the wind and her spouse were by her side at the same time, Silver Moon realized that double happiness is not just double. Soon, Lester overlooked the green emerald territory. I remember that in the original book, Nokmachi, located in the Nokmachi Plain, was a relatively poor country. What caused Nokmachi to become poor? If the Emerald Territory is as rich as it is, as long as it is properly planned, and trade and economy are revitalized, it will not be a problem to feed hundreds of thousands of people. When he felt that it was about time, Lester gave an order to Silver Moon. Silver Moon, land, tie. The wingspan tilted down, and the beautiful Emerald Territory was within reach. Soon, the shadow crossbowman guarding the Emerald Territory sentry tower discovered the uninvited guest in the sky, and the sentry quickly blew the warning horn. Woo 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 woo. The people who were still outside quickly put down their work, and ran quickly to the nearest building. The crossbows were strung, the swords were unsheathed, and facing the huge dragon bird that they had never seen before. Although they were afraid in their hearts, no one retreated. Shoot. Apsel couldn't find a suitable anti-aircraft method for a while, so he hurriedly assembled dozens of crossbowmen, stood on the roof in a dispersed and dense formation, and issued an attack order to the silver-winged dragon bird. The sparse crossbow arrows flew to a certain height and began to fall. The dragon bird suddenly turned around and easily avoided it. As for whether it would kill some unlucky guy after falling, this was no longer something Apsel needed to consider. Take people to the war workshop to find Master Blacksmith Crystal. Ask him to take out the Dark Blood Demon crossbow. As many as you can. Go quickly. After arranging the soldiers to go to the war workshop, Apsel issued a new order. All crossbowmen, get ready to shoot. Wait for orders. Slowly stepping on the ring with their feet to tighten the bowstring, the crossbowman just aimed at the silver-winged dragon bird hovering in the sky and stopped shooting. In the sky, he appeased the somewhat irritable Silver Moon and stopped forcing the order to land. Facing the attack launched by his own territory, Lester could not help but enter a state of deep thought. If there is really a wyvern attacking, ordinary crossbows will definitely not work. Should he let Crystal develop a bed crossbow made of magic steel? Wait, magic steel? Dark Blood Demon crossbow? Lester's face changed drastically. Even as powerful as Silver Moon, it will definitely not be the opponent of the Dark Blood Demon crossbow. Even he himself dared not guarantee that Silver Moon could survive after being pierced by 2 magic steel crossbow arrows. Looking down, indeed, several soldiers left the crossbowman's team and hurriedly ran towards the war workshop. It seems that Apsel really wants to kill him. I'm Lord Lester. Apsel, stop your attack. Lester shouted after holding his breath. The voice spread to the ground with the breeze. Many soldiers heard a somewhat ethereal voice, but they did not dare to believe it. Apsel heard a familiar voice and wondered if he was hallucinating. Silver Moon, land. Although somewhat dissatisfied, Silver Moon still flapped its wings obediently to lower its altitude and try to find a suitable place to land. I'm Lester. Apsel, are you there? Lester shouted again. The voice was much clearer than before, which made Apsel's eyes light up, and he also shouted at the top of his voice. Is it Lord? It's me. Stop attacking. Lord Lester is on the dragon bird. The soldiers were relieved and released the crossbows. The nervous and fearful expressions turned into curiosity and admiration. So the Lord disappeared this time to tame the dragon bird. Under the nervous and yearning gaze of many people, Lester constantly comforted the somewhat frightened and anxious Silver Moon by flapping, and landed towards the open space in the south, where there were fewer people. Let's go. Calling the shadow crossbowman, Apsel quickly followed. On the way, several soldiers on horseback brought 3 Dark Blood Demon crossbows, all of which were brought by Apsel in the team. Finally, Lester successfully stepped on the land of Emerald Territory. Feeling the joy in his heart, Lester suddenly realized that he had unconsciously regarded this place as his home. Woo 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 galugutite. Woo woo woo. Looking at the humans slowly surrounding him, Silver Moon sometimes bared her teeth and claws at the soldiers, and sometimes made pitiful and aggrieved whimpers to Lester. She was a little at a loss, not knowing whether she should fly away quickly or grab her spouse and fly away quickly. Don't be afraid, Silver Moon, they won't hurt you. Lester stretched out his hand, and Silver Moon, who kept whimpering, lowered her slender neck and put her furry chin on Lester's hand. Don't get close to here. Silver Moon is very scared. Yes. Hearing the order, the soldiers took the initiative to step back a few steps to make room for Lester and Silver-Winged Dragon Bird. When Yin found that humans were moving away from her, her anxiety subsided visibly. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.